My father leaned across the table in the hearing room and said, "Your sister earned this house?" He didn't whisper it. He wanted the planning board to hear him. He wanted the neighbors behind us to hear it too. Kristen sat beside him with her leather folder open. Her designer had arranged color samples across the table, cream, gray, and something called mountain linen. I had one folder in front of me. It was thin. Dad looked at it, then at me. "You've been gone most of your adult life," he said. "Kristen stayed. She took care of your mother. Now you want to hide behind paperwork." The room went quiet. A woman behind me shifted in her chair. Someone near the door coughed. Kristen kept her eyes on the board. She'd told me that morning she didn't want things to get personal. Then she'd invited half of South C Street to watch. The board chair adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Hamilton," he said to me, "do you have evidence that you're authorized to withhold consent?" "I do." Dad shook his head. "Of course she has evidence," he said. "Sarah always has a document." That got a small laugh from somewhere behind Kristen. I didn't turn around. 3 months earlier, I had no idea we would end up in that room. At the time, my life was pretty ordinary. I worked during the week, drilled with my unit when required, and spent too many evenings answering messages at my kitchen table. I was 42, a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve, and I'd served for 20 years. 2 deployments had taught me how to sleep almost anywhere, except on my own couch with my phone beside me. I lived outside Bozeman, about 40 minutes from my parents' house in Livingston. The drive could be longer when the wind came across the pass. I still made it at least twice a month. My mother, Diane, had died the previous fall. She was 70. Her death wasn't sudden. We had time to understand what was happening. That didn't make it easier. It only meant we learned how to discuss terrible things in practical language. Mom would point at a stack of envelopes and say, "Those need to be paid." I'd open my laptop. Kristen would say, "She barely ate today." Dad would leave the room. That was how we handled those months. Kristen lived 6 minutes away from Mom and Dad. She brought groceries, sat through appointments, and handled the daily things I couldn't do from Bozeman. I managed bills, insurance calls, medical statements, and the steady flow of forms that arrived after every appointment. Mom paid Kristen for the hours she missed at work. She also reimbursed her for groceries and mileage. I knew because I moved the money from Mom's account after Mom approved it. Nobody talked about that part. When relatives asked how things were going, Dad said, "Kristen has done everything." Usually I was sitting right there. I never corrected him. Kristen had done a lot. I wasn't going to reduce that because Dad couldn't say my name in the same sentence. After Mom died, Dad stayed in the house on South C Street. It was a narrow 2-story place with pale siding, a deep front porch, and a brass lock that stuck when the weather turned cold. My parents had lived there for more than 30 years. Mom loved the original woodwork. The front room had dark trim around the windows and a wide built-in cabinet along one wall. Dad had wanted to paint it white for years. Mom always said, "You paint that wood after I'm gone and I'll come back." Dad would say, "That might be worth it." Then she'd laugh. The house looked plain from the street. Inside, it held every version of our family. Kristen's height marks were still inside the pantry door. Mine stopped lower down because I'd refused to stand there after I turned 19. Dad's old fishing maps filled one drawer in the dining room. Mom kept spare buttons in a blue coffee cup above the washing machine. In 2019, Mom placed the house into a residence trust. She explained it to us once at the dining room table. Dad could live there for as long as the conditions were followed. He didn't own the house. Kristen and I didn't own it either. The trust did. Mom named herself trustee first. She named me as successor. Dad didn't like that. "You picked the one who doesn't live here," he said. Mom looked at him over her reading glasses. "I picked the one who reads things before signing them." Kristen laughed. Dad didn't. Mom later took me to Derek Keller's office. Derek was her estate attorney. He was also a Montana Army National Guard JAG officer, though that wasn't why she hired him. They knew each other through a local veterans committee. Derek walked us through the trust. Mom made me read the conditions twice. My duties were basic while Dad lived there. I kept the insurance current, approved major repairs, checked the taxes, and made sure the house stayed within the use Mom had set. Dad had personal residential occupancy. That meant he could live there. It didn't mean he could sell it, give it away, or turn it into something else. Mom tapped the page with one finger. If anybody starts getting creative, you stop them. Who's going to get creative? I asked. She looked at me for a second. Families get creative when property is involved. After she died, Derek recorded the change showing that I was successor trustee. He kept the original trust and deed in his office vault. I had a certified trust certificate in a fireproof box at home. Mostly, being trustee meant paying bills and keeping records. Then Dad called me on a Sunday in February. "We're having dinner," he said. 6 o'clock. "Is something wrong?" "No. Does something have to be wrong? With you calling me 3 days early, usually." He ignored that. "Kristen's bringing food. Don't be late." I arrived at 5:52 with a bag of coffee Dad liked and a new furnace filter. Snow had been pushed into gray ridges along the curb. Kristen's silver SUV was already in the driveway. Dad opened the door before I knocked. "You can park around back," he said. "I'm already parked. You're blocking Kristen. She's in the driveway. She may need to leave first." I moved my car. When I came inside, the dining table was covered with large white boards. Kristen stood over them with a glass of wine. She wore a cream sweater and the gold earrings Mom had given her on her 30th birthday. "Perfect timing," she said. "For what?" She smiled at Dad. He walked into the kitchen as if he hadn't heard me. I set the furnace filter by the stairs. One of the boards showed the front of the house with black windows and a new sign beside the porch. Another showed the dining room with 6 small tables. The built-in cabinet was gone. "What's this?" I asked. Kristen moved her wine away from the paper. "It's still rough." "What is it?" Dad called from the kitchen. "Sit down first." I stayed where I was. Across the top of the largest board were the words, "Hamilton House Guest Retreat." I read them twice. Kristen stepped beside me. "Livingston needs upscale lodging that isn't another hotel," she said. "People want something personal. Whose house is this?" She gave me a tired look. "Don't start." I asked a question. "It's Mom and Dad's house." "No, it's the trust's house." Dad returned carrying a bowl of salad. "For God's sake, Sarah. That matters? We haven't even eaten." Kristen turned one board around. It showed the upstairs bedrooms with private bathroom additions. "I've been working with a designer from Bozeman," she said. "She does historic properties." "Working how?" "Planning." "Did you hire her?" Kristen took a drink. Dad set the salad down hard enough to shake the silverware. "I told her she could have the house." For a moment, I thought I'd misunderstood him. "You told her what?" "She's earned it." Kristen stared at the floor. She already knew he was going to say it. Dad pulled out his chair. "Sit down. We can discuss this like adults." I looked at the boards again. The front parlor had been labeled reception. The dining room was labeled breakfast salon. There were 6 guest rooms, which was interesting because the house only had 4 bedrooms. "You can't give her the house," I said. "I live here. That doesn't make it yours to give." His face changed. It wasn't anger at first. It was embarrassment. I had contradicted him in front of Kristen. Then the anger came. "Your mother wanted me taken care of. She did. And Kristen takes care of me. I know. What do you do?" The question sat there. I looked at the coffee I'd brought. Then I looked at the furnace filter near the stairs. Kristen spoke more softly. "Dad doesn't mean you do nothing. He just asked what I do. You know what he means." "No, I want to hear it." Dad pulled out his chair and sat. "You visit," he said. "You handle paper. Then you leave." I nodded once. Kristen came around the table. "This isn't about insulting you. What is it about? Keeping the house in the family. It's already protected. That's not the same as using it." She tapped the drawing with one fingernail. The income would cover maintenance. Dad could stay in the ground floor suite. I'd manage the business. Eventually, I'd live here. Eventually, after Dad doesn't need it. Dad looked down at his plate. That was the first thing she said that seemed to bother him. I pulled out a chair, but I didn't sit. How far have you gone? Kristen folded her arms. We're exploring. Have you signed anything? Why are you interrogating me? Because there's a business plan on Mom's dining table. Dad sighed. She's put down some money. How much? That's private, Kristen said. It stops being private if it's tied to this house. She looked at Dad again. He said, $24,000. I stared at him. Kristen quickly added, not all of it has been paid. Some of it is deposits and committed work. To whom? A designer, a contractor, a booking consultant. You hired a booking consultant for a house you don't own? Dad authorized it. He can't. Dad pushed his plate away. This is exactly why we didn't tell you sooner. There it was. Not why they hadn't asked me, why they hadn't told me. Kristen sat across from him. I knew you'd react like this, she said. How should I react? You could listen. I have listened. You've spent money based on permission Dad cannot give. She rubbed her forehead. You always do this. Do what? You walk into a room and make everyone feel stupid. I haven't called anyone stupid. You don't have to. Dad stood again. We're eating. The conversation was over because he said it was over. That had worked when we were young. Kristen sat down. I took my chair too. We ate baked chicken, salad, and rolls from the grocery store. Dad asked Kristen about a friend's new car. Kristen asked whether he'd scheduled his dental appointment. Nobody asked me anything. Halfway through dinner, I noticed a white envelope under one of the design boards. The return address was City Hall. I could only see 3 words through the clear window. Public planning notice. I kept eating. When Dad went to the kitchen for more iced tea, I moved the design board just enough to read the address. It was the house. Kristen reached across the table and slid the envelope toward herself. That's nothing, she said. What did you apply for? We haven't applied. I looked at the envelope under her hand. Then why is the city sending notice? It's preliminary. Let me see it. No. Dad came back into the room. Sarah, leave it alone. I wiped my mouth and stood. Kristen watched me pick up my coat. You're leaving? Yes. Because we're trying to do something positive? Because neither of you is answering a simple question. Dad followed me to the front hall. Don't make this ugly. I put on my coat. I didn't hire a designer. You know what I mean. I don't think I do. Outside, the air had turned sharp. I cleared snow from my windshield with one glove and waited for the defroster to work. At home, I took the fireproof box from my bedroom closet. The certified trust certificate was beneath my service papers and Mom's death certificate. I read it at the kitchen table. Then I opened the city website. The planning page listed current applications by address. South C Street was there. The applicant was Kristen Wagner. The request was for conditional commercial use. Dad's name appeared under owner authorization. I called the planning office the next morning. The clerk confirmed the application was active. Public notice would be posted that week. Has the property owner signed? I asked. There's an authorization attached. Whose? Alan Hamilton. I wrote that down. Then I asked, does your file show that the property is held in trust? The clerk went quiet. Not on the application, she said. I thanked her, ended the call, and placed the certified trust certificate beside my notebook. For the first time since dinner, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I didn't call Dad or Kristen. Instead, I went to work. That was my usual response to family problems. I gave everyone time to settle down, then I handled whatever practical thing was waiting. By evening, Dad would normally act as if nothing had happened. Kristen would send a harmless message about groceries or weather. If I answered in the same tone, the disagreement disappeared. Nothing got resolved. It just stopped being discussed. At 11 that morning, Dad called. Insurance sent me something, he said. What did they send? I don't know. An email. What does it say? If I knew that, I wouldn't be calling you. I closed the spreadsheet on my monitor. Forward it to me. I don't know how, from my phone. You've forwarded emails before. This one has an attachment. I waited. He waited too. Finally, he said, Are you coming over this week? I was there last night. I need help with this. What happened to not wanting me involved? That was about Kristen's project. It's the same house. No, it isn't. I looked through my office window. A delivery truck was blocking the lane below. Dad, the trust owns the house. The insurance protects the house. Kristen's application concerns the house. It's all the same house. You enjoy making things complicated. I didn't create the trust. No, your mother did. The way he said it made that sound like something she'd done to him. He lowered his voice. Can you just come look at the email? I almost said no. Instead, I said, I'll be there after 5. Bring the password book. You have the password book. I can't find it. I knew exactly where it was. The top drawer of Mom's desk under the calculator. Did you check the desk? Kristen cleaned that out. My hand tightened around the phone. Where did she put everything? I don't know, Sarah. Ask her. He ended the call. I sat there for another minute. Then I reopened my spreadsheet. At 5:20, I pulled up in front of the house. Dad's truck was in the driveway. The silver SUV wasn't there, so I parked without moving my car around back. I used Mom's original brass key. The lock caught halfway, just as it always did. I lifted the handle, turned the key, and the door opened. Dad was in the living room watching television. You could knock, he said. You told me to come. I didn't know when. I texted you. My phone's charging. It was on the table beside him. I took off my boots and carried my laptop into the dining room. The design boards were gone. 4 pale rectangles remained in the dust where they had been. Where's your computer? I asked. In the kitchen. The computer was open beside a pile of mail. I found the insurance email. It was an annual occupancy questionnaire. The company wanted confirmation that the house remained a private residence. That question would have been simple the day before. I read the email again. Dad opened the refrigerator. Is it something important? It asks whether the house is being used for business. It isn't yet. That's not the only question. What else? Whether any renovations are planned. He took out a container of soup. Well, that depends on you, apparently. I looked at him. He put the soup on the counter. Don't give me that face. What face? The officer face. I'm reading an insurance form. You know what I mean. I did know. He meant the expression I used when I wanted a clear answer. At work, people usually gave me one. At home, it was treated like a personality defect. Are renovations scheduled? I asked. Kristen would know. What contractors has she hired? She would know that too. You said she committed $24,000. That doesn't mean people are starting tomorrow. Then when are they starting? He peeled the lid from the soup. You're making a bigger issue than this needs to be. I turned the computer toward him. The insurance company is asking me to certify the current use and planned work. I can't guess. You're not guessing. I live here. And you signed a commercial use application. He placed the lid back on the soup. How do you know that? It's public. Were you searching for it? The notice was on your table. He looked toward the dining room as if the envelope might still be there. Kristen said the application was preliminary. The clerk said it's active. You called the city? Yes. His mouth tightened. That was how our family worked. Kristen could file an application concerning the house, but my phone call was the breach of trust. Dad carried the soup to the microwave. You went behind our backs. I called a public office about property I administer. You always have an answer. I need one from you. Did you sign the authorization? He pressed 3 buttons. The microwave started. I signed something. Did you read it? Kristen explained it. That's not what I asked. He watched the container turn behind the glass. No, he said. I didn't read every word. It was the first useful answer he'd given me. What did she tell you it was? She said the city needed proof I supported the project. Did she tell you the trust owns the house? She knows about the trust. Did she tell the city? He opened the microwave before it finished. I wasn't there. You signed the form. She brought it here. I closed the insurance questionnaire without submitting it. Dad noticed. You're not handling that? I need accurate information first. It's an insurance email, Sarah. You're acting like we're in court. I'm not going to make a false statement because you don't want an uncomfortable conversation. He stirred the soup. I knew you'd punish me. I'm not punishing you. You're holding up the insurance. The policy isn't being held up. The form isn't due until next month. Then why are you making it sound urgent? You called me at work and asked me to drive here." He stopped stirring. For a second, neither of us spoke. I walked to Mom's desk and opened the top drawer. It was empty except for a rubber band and 2 dead batteries. Where are Mom's papers? Kristen has them. Why? She's organizing things. Those papers include trust records and household receipts. You have copies. That isn't the point. He carried his soup to the table. You didn't want the job. Now you're upset that she did it. What job? Taking care of this place. I've been handling the bills since Mom got sick. From a computer. Yes, from a computer. That's how the bills get paid. He sat down. Kristen was here. I leaned against the desk. There it was again. Presents counted. Everything else was paperwork. I was here too. Not every day. I couldn't be. You chose your career. I did. Nobody made you leave. I looked at the empty drawer. When I joined the Army Reserve in 2006, Dad told everyone he was proud of me. He put a small flag in the front window during my first deployment. After I returned, he started treating every missed dinner like proof I'd chosen strangers over him. I had spent years trying to make up for that choice without admitting I was doing it. I drove over when the furnace stopped. I handled Mom's claims. I ordered Dad's medication refills when the pharmacy changed its system. I brought coffee, filters, batteries, and printer ink. Every task was my way of saying I still belonged there. Dad never asked why I kept coming. I never asked why practical help was the only kind he accepted from me. Did Kristen tell you I would have to approve the business use? I asked. He took a spoonful of soup. She said you'd sign after the city approved it. My attention sharpened. She said that? She said the city process came first. That isn't how it works. She thought you'd support her. Why would she think that? Because she's your sister. I pulled out the chair across from him. Did you tell her I agreed? No. Did she tell the designer I agreed? I don't know. Did she tell the contractors? I don't know. He put down his spoon. Why can't you be happy for her? Because she committed money she may not get back. That's her risk. It's also Mom's house. He gave a short laugh. Your mother's dead. I became still. Dad looked away first. He hadn't meant it the way it sounded. That didn't make it harmless. The refrigerator motor clicked on. A truck passed outside, tires hissing through wet snow. Dad rubbed one hand over his face. I'm tired, he said. I know. She wanted Kristen to have something. Mom? Yes. Did she say that? She didn't have to. I waited. He picked up his spoon again. Kristen gave up a lot. What did she give up? Time, work, her own life. She was paid for the hours she missed. His spoon stopped above the bowl. What? Mom paid her. Every week. I processed it. That was expense money. Some was reimbursement, some was compensation. He set the spoon down. How much? You didn't know. Your mother handled her own money. I sent the transfers after Mom approved them. Dad stared at me. That was the small piece of truth I hadn't known I was carrying. He really believed Kristen had provided all that care without being paid. I had assumed Mom told him. Kristen had apparently assumed I would stay quiet. Dad pushed his chair back. You're trying to cheapen what she did. No, I'm correcting something you didn't know. Same thing. It isn't. She was here when your mother was scared. So was I. On the phone. I looked down at my hands. He was right about some of it. There had been nights when Kristen sat beside Mom and I was 200 miles away with my unit. There had been appointments I joined through a speakerphone. Kristen changed sheets, washed dishes, and watched Mom breathe. Payment didn't erase that. It also didn't turn the house into hers. Both things could be true, but Dad didn't want both. He wanted one daughter who stayed and one who left. It made the story easier. I stood and closed my laptop. Send me the contractor names when you have them. Why? Because the insurer asked about planned work. You'll contact them behind Kristen's back too? I'll verify what's planned. He shook his head. You don't trust her. I don't trust an application that leaves out the owner. She didn't leave you out. You're the trustee, not the owner. The trust owns it. That's what I said. No, it isn't. He carried his bowl to the sink. I put on my coat. At the front door, he said, Kristen wanted to ask you herself. Ask me what? To be part of this. I turned around. Part of it how? She thought you could handle the financial side. For 1 second, I almost laughed. Kristen would own the idea. Dad would give her the house. I would manage records, payments, taxes, and insurance. I'd be useful. I just wouldn't have a voice. Did she ask you to tell me that? No. Then why didn't she mention it last night? You were hostile. I asked what she signed. You came in looking for a fight. I brought coffee and a furnace filter. He glanced toward the stairs where the filter still rested against the wall. You forgot to change that, he said. I looked at it too. Then I looked back at him. No, I said. I didn't forget. I left it where it was. The following weekend, I had reserve duty. I arrived before sunrise and spent the morning reviewing a logistics exercise with my staff. Just before lunch, a captain brought me a corrected movement plan. We used your old checklist, she said. It caught 2 vehicles assigned to the same trailer. Who found it? Sergeant Nolan. Make sure his name goes on the correction. Yes, ma'am. She gathered the papers, then paused. Ma'am, are you all right? I'm fine. You've read the same page 4 times. I looked down. She was right. Family issue, I said. She nodded once. Understood. No questions, no advice. She left me the corrected plan and returned to work. My phone buzzed 10 minutes later. Dad had sent a photograph of the furnace filter. Under it, he wrote, You left this here. I typed, Kristen can install it. I stared at the message before sending it. It felt petty. It also felt accurate. I sent it. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then they disappeared. A minute later, he wrote, Forget it. Normally, I would have called. I would have explained that I wasn't angry about the filter. I would have driven back after duty and installed it myself. Instead, I opened my calendar and scheduled time Monday morning to collect the full application from City Hall. Monday morning, I parked across from City Hall. Livingston was still waking up. A man spread salt outside a coffee shop. 2 city trucks idled near the intersection. The mountains were clear above the rooftops, which usually meant colder weather was coming. The planning office was down a short hallway past the utility counter. A clerk sat behind a glass divider with a small opening at the bottom. I called Friday, I said. I'm here for a public application. She asked for the address. When I gave it, she paused. You're Sarah Hamilton? Yes. She studied me for a moment, then pulled a file from a tray beside her desk. The applicant called after you did. What did she say? She wanted to know who had requested information. Did you tell her? Your request is public, too. That's fine. She carried the file to the copy machine. While it ran, I looked at the notice board. Kristen's application was listed for a planning hearing in 4 weeks. The hearing date had been assigned 2 days before our family dinner. She already knew there would be a public hearing when she told me they were only exploring. The clerk returned with a thick stack. The full file is 58 pages, she said. Do you still want all of it? Yes. There's a copying charge. That's fine. She handed me the first page. Kristen's name appeared under applicant. Alan Hamilton appeared under property owner. The box beside owner authorization was checked. Did your office verify ownership? I asked. We use the information submitted. The recorded deed identifies a trust. She leaned closer to the glass. Is there an ownership dispute? No, there's an inaccurate application. I can't decide that at the counter. I'm not asking you to. She relaxed slightly. I showed her my identification, then placed the certified trust certificate under the opening. This identifies me as successor trustee. I want notices sent to me. She read the first page. Can I copy this? Yes. She took it to the machine. I turned to Kristen's project statement. She described the house as a family property being transferred to her by its current owner. The proposed guest house would offer 6 rooms, breakfast service, small private events, and what she called curated local experiences. I read that phrase twice. A schedule near the back divided the project into phases. Interior preparation would begin in March. Plumbing and electrical work would follow after city review. The target opening was early summer. The first interior work was scheduled for the following week. I moved to the next attachment. It was a letter signed by Dad. I authorized my daughter, Kristen Wagner, to apply for permits and approvals concerning the property at South C Street. I approved the proposed commercial use and planned renovations. Below his signature, someone had typed, "Property owner." I recognized the signature. I also recognized the date. Dad had signed it 3 weeks before dinner. The clerk returned with my certificate. "I've added you to the notice list," she said. "Thank you. Do you want to submit written comments?" "Not yet." She looked down at Dad's authorization. "If you're saying he isn't the owner, you should probably address that before the hearing." "What does the board require?" "Owner authorization for this type of application. Does an occupant's authorization qualify?" "That depends on the property documents. Who reviews those?" "The planning director may send them to the city attorney if there's a legal question." I shook my head. "There doesn't need to be a legal opinion. I'm asking what happens if the trustee doesn't consent. The application may not be complete." "May not be?" She chose her next words carefully. "The applicant would have an opportunity to provide corrected documents." "How long?" "Usually before the staff report is finalized." "When is that?" 10 days before the hearing. That gave Kristen about 2 weeks. It also meant silence could help her. If I waited, she could keep telling everyone my approval was coming. I paid for the copies. Before I left, the clerk handed me a yellow receipt. "One more thing," she said. "The public notices go out Wednesday." "To whom?" "Nearby property owners. They'll also be posted at the site." I looked at the hearing date again. "So the neighborhood will know this week." "Yes." "Can the applicant withdraw before notices go out? If we receive it before processing tomorrow afternoon." I thanked her and carried the file outside. My deliberate move had worked. I had the full application. I had Dad's signed authorization. I had the schedule. I also had less time than I thought. I sat in my car and called Kristen. She answered on the 4th ring. "I'm at work," she said. "So am I." "Then why are you calling?" "I have the planning application." She went quiet. I could hear a door close on her end. "You went down there?" "Yes. I told you it was preliminary. It includes a hearing date. Everything includes dates. That doesn't mean it's final. You wrote that Dad owns the house. He lives there. That isn't the same thing. For practical purposes, it is. Not for owner consent." She breathed out slowly. "Sarah, I have 10 minutes. Then answer one question. Did you know the trust owned the house when you filed?" "Of course I knew. That confirmed the inconsistency. It wasn't a misunderstanding. She hadn't forgotten. She had decided Dad's signature was enough." "Why did you identify him as owner?" "Because he's the homeowner. He's the occupant. Only you use that word. The trust uses that word." She lowered her voice. "I knew you'd get stuck on language. The city requires the owner's authorization. I have Dad's authorization. You knew he couldn't give it." "No, I knew you'd have to sign eventually." "Why would I sign?" "Because this is good for everyone. That isn't an answer. It gives Dad income. It keeps the property maintained. It creates something local. You get to keep doing whatever you do, and I handle the actual house." I looked through the windshield at City Hall. "What I do? You know what I mean. No, say it." There was a pause. "The Army. Your career. Your life in Bozeman. I'm 40 minutes away. You act like that's close when it helps you. And you act like it's another state. I was here every day. I know. Do you?" "Yes, Kristen. I know exactly what you did." Her voice changed. "You told Dad I was paid. He didn't know. It was none of his business. You used unpaid care as the reason you deserve the house. I never said unpaid. You let him believe it. That's between me and Dad. The money came from Mom's account. She wanted to pay me. I know. I processed it. Then what's your point?" "My point is that you're allowing one version of this family to become the official version. You stayed. I left. Dad owns the house. Mom wanted you to have it. None of those statements is completely true. She didn't answer. A city employee walked past my car carrying a rolled poster. Finally, Kristen said, "You have no idea what those months were like. I know I wasn't there every night. You called after everything was done. I called when my schedule allowed. Exactly." I closed my eyes. She had found the one answer that always worked on me. I could defend the bills. I could defend the calls and the drives. I couldn't put myself in Mom's bedroom on nights when I wasn't there. Kristen knew that. "I'm not arguing about who loved Mom more," I said. "Neither am I." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm trying to build something. With permission you don't have." "Dad gave me permission. He can invite people to dinner. He cannot authorize a guest house." "You love saying that. I don't love any of this. I've already spent money. How much has actually been paid? That's private." "You told Dad $24,000. He shouldn't have told you. Are the deposits refundable?" "Some are." "Which ones?" "I have to go. When does interior work start?" She said nothing. "The schedule says next week. That's preparation." "What does preparation mean?" "Clearing rooms, removing some outdated finishes." "Which finishes?" "The designer made recommendations." "What are they removing?" "I'm not doing this over the phone." "Then send me the scope of work." "You're not my business partner." "No, I'm the trustee." And there it is. What? The title. It isn't a title. It's a duty. Same difference with you. She ended the call. I sat there holding the phone. For years, I had believed that if I kept helping quietly, my family would eventually understand why I couldn't always be physically present. I thought there would be some point when the bills, the drives, the late-night calls, and the work behind the scenes added up to belonging. Nobody had asked me to do that. I had made myself indispensable in small ways, then waited for gratitude nobody had promised. Worse, I had hidden some of my own work. When Mom paid Kristen, I never mentioned that I processed the transfers. When I handled insurance disputes, I told Dad they were taken care of. When the roof repair came in over budget, I found a second estimate and moved on. I thought silence made me generous. It also made me easy to erase. My phone rang again. This time, it was Dad. "What did you say to your sister?" I asked about the application. "She's upset." "So am I. She's at work. I called her once. You accused her of lying. I asked why she listed you as owner. I am the owner." "No, Dad. I have lived in that house for 34 years. The trust owns it. Stop saying that like it means something. It means exactly what it says." He raised his voice. "Your mother didn't put you in charge so you could throw your weight around. She put me in charge because somebody had to follow the document. She trusted you to take care of us. I am trying to. By attacking Kristen? By finding out whether contractors are about to remove parts of the house. They're cleaning. The schedule says interior preparation. That's cleaning. Then why won't she send me the scope? Because you're looking for reasons to stop her." I watched another employee attach a public notice to the board by the entrance. "I'm looking for accurate information." You always say that when you've already decided. Decided what? That everyone else is wrong. I lowered the phone. A horn sounded behind me. I had been sitting in a limited parking space for almost 40 minutes. "Dad, I need to move my car. Are you stopping the application? I haven't submitted anything. Promise me you won't. I'm not making that promise. This is why your mother should have chosen Kristen." He ended the call. I pulled into traffic and drove 2 blocks before parking again. Then I called Derek's office. His assistant answered. "I need a certified copy of the recorded deed and the full trust," I said. She asked whether the copies were for my records. "They're for an active planning matter involving the house." Her tone became more formal. "Has anything been filed?" "A conditional use application." "By you?" "By Kristen." She placed me on hold. Derek came on the line less than a minute later. "Sarah, where are you?" "In my car near City Hall. Do you have the application?" "Yes. Does it concern disposition or use of the house?" "Commercial use." "Kristen plans to operate a guest house." He was silent. "Derek, I'm here." Did Mom ever tell you Kristen wanted to do this? No. Then why did you ask that question? I need to review something before I answer. What? I can't discuss it until I confirm the terms of Diane's instruction. I sat straighter. What instruction? Something she left with my office. About the trust, related to the house. Have you read it? No. That answer made no sense to me. You have an instruction you haven't read? It's sealed. Who is it for? I can't answer that yet. I looked at the application on the passenger seat. Can you at least tell me whether it changes the trust? No, it cannot change the recorded trust. That mattered. Whatever Mom had left, it wasn't a second ownership document. It didn't create another solution. Derek continued. Bring me the complete application this afternoon. Do not alter the property's status before we review the trust language and the filing. I wasn't planning to. Good. Also, don't make representations about Diane's intent beyond what she told you directly. I haven't. When is the hearing? In 4 weeks. And work begins when? According to this, next week. He paused. Then the hearing isn't your first deadline. I looked back at Kristen's schedule. It listed room clearing for Monday. Decorative removal began Tuesday. I had gone to City Hall to understand what they'd filed. Now I needed to find out what they planned to remove before anyone walked through Mom's door with tools. Derek's office was on the second floor of an older brick building near the railroad tracks. I arrived just after 2 with the application tucked under my arm. His assistant took me straight back. Derek stood when I entered. He was 48 with close-cut gray hair and reading glasses he usually forgot were on his head. A framed photograph from a guard ceremony sat behind his desk. The small brass plate beneath it read, Major Derek Keller. He pointed to the conference table. Let's spread everything out. I gave him the application. He started with Dad's authorization and read it without speaking. Then he moved to Kristen's project statement, the floor plans, and the work schedule. When he reached the phrase about the property being transferred, he placed one finger beside it. Has Alan signed anything else? Not that I know. Has Kristen asked you to transfer control? No. Has she asked for commercial use consent? Not directly. Then don't guess about what she intends. We deal with what she filed. He unlocked a cabinet behind his desk and removed a thick folder. The recorded deed was clipped to the inside cover. The trust followed. I recognized Mom's initials at the bottom of every page. Seeing them bothered me more than I expected. Derek noticed. Do you need a minute? No. He sat beside me and opened the trust to the occupancy section. You already know the basic structure, he said. Diane owns nothing here individually. The trust holds title. Alan has a personal right to live in the house. As a residence. Correct. He can't assign that right. Correct. He can't approve commercial use, not without the trustee's written consent. I haven't given it. I know. He turned several pages. The language was plain once the longer sentences were broken apart. Dad could occupy the house. He could not transfer possession or control. The property had to remain residential unless the trustee approved another use in writing. A prohibited assignment or commercial conversion could end his occupancy. After that, the trustee had a duty to repair and sell the house. The net proceeds would be protected equally for Kristen and me. Mom had reviewed all of that with me in 2019. At the time, it sounded like protection against some distant problem. Dad lending the house to a friend. Someone pressuring him to sign it away. A business taking over after he became too old to manage things. I never imagined Kristen standing behind the pressure. Does his letter to the city count as an assignment? I asked. Derek folded his hands. It may satisfy the general termination condition. May? I'm being careful because you have several choices ahead of you. Alan approved a transfer of control in commercial use. The application relies on his approval. Those facts matter. But termination is your decision as trustee. It isn't automatic. You need to document what happened and act consistently. I'm not trying to remove Dad from the house. I didn't say you were. What happens if I refuse consent? Then Kristen cannot obtain valid owner authorization from you. What if the planning board approves the use anyway? Zoning approval doesn't give her property rights. The board determines whether a use is allowed under city rules. It doesn't rewrite Diane's trust. That was the first answer all week that felt solid. I leaned back. So I can stop the application. You can refuse the consent it requires. That's different. Different how? You control your decision. You do not control what Kristen files, what Alan says, or whether the board schedules a hearing. I understand. Do you? He wasn't being rude. He wanted an actual answer. I looked at Dad's signature. Yes, I said. I can state the boundary. I can't make them accept it. Good. He closed the trust. What about the sealed instruction? I asked. Derek looked toward the locked cabinet. It remains sealed. Why? Diane directed me to open it at the first formal proceeding concerning the house's disposition or use. There's an active application. There is. The formal proceeding is the hearing. You can't open it now? No. Do you know what it says? No. Not even generally? She told me it explains her intent. She did not tell me the contents. Does it give anyone new rights? It cannot. A private letter cannot replace the recorded deed or amend the trust after her death. So whatever it says, my authority is already here. I touched the trust. Yes, he said. That mattered too. I didn't want to spend 4 weeks wondering whether Mom had secretly promised Kristen the house. If she had wanted to change the trust, she knew how. She had created it properly and recorded it. The sealed letter might explain something. It could not undo what she signed. Derek moved Dad's authorization beside the work schedule. What do you want to do today? I want to refuse commercial use consent. Completely? Yes. Do you also want to direct them not to begin work? Yes. Then put both things in writing. He opened a blank document on his laptop. I stopped him. I want to write it. He turned the laptop toward me. That was important. Derek could explain the trust. He could keep the records. He could attend the hearing. He was not going to become the person who fought my family for me. I wrote 3 short paragraphs. I identified myself as successor trustee. I stated that the trust owned the property. I did not consent to assignment, commercial use, or renovations connected to Kristen's proposed guest house. I directed Alan and Kristen not to begin work or allow contractor access without written trustee approval. Derek read it. Clear, he said. Too blunt? No. Too legal? No. Should I mention termination? Not unless you're prepared to consider it. I looked at him. I'm not. Then don't use it as a threat. I removed the sentence. He printed the notice. I signed it. His assistant made certified copies of the trust certificate and deed. She also scanned the notice and attachments. I emailed the complete packet to the planning office from the conference room. Then I sent it to Dad and Kristen. Kristen replied within 2 minutes. Received. Dad didn't reply. Derek handed me 2 paper sets. Delivering these in person isn't legally necessary, he said. I know. You're going anyway. Yes. Then take photographs of the property before any work begins. Do you think they'll ignore the notice? I think you should document the current condition. That was not the same answer. I put the papers in my folder. What obligation do I have with the insurance company? Answer accurately. Tell them proposed commercial work has not been authorized. And if contractors arrive, you have trustee authority to protect the property. I'm asking what that means in ordinary language. It means you can deny access. I stood. Derek remained seated. Sarah. I stopped. Once you assert the trust conditions, you need to follow them yourself. No informal exceptions. No approving small work by phone. No pretending you didn't know because enforcing a boundary feels harsh. I know. This will expose the difference between being helpful and being responsible. I didn't answer. He was right, and I didn't like hearing it. For years, I had managed the trust as quietly as possible. Dad lived there. I paid what needed paying. If he wanted a repair, I usually approved it. I treated my authority like something embarrassing. Now that Kristen had forced it into the open, I couldn't put it back in the drawer. At 4:30, the planning clerk called. "We received your documents," she said. "Are they in the public file?" "Yes." "The application has been marked as lacking verified owner consent. What does that mean for the hearing?" "The applicant can respond. Staff will review anything she provides, so the hearing remains scheduled. For now." "Can work begin under the application?" "The city hasn't issued any land use approval." "That wasn't my question." She paused. "We don't supervise private interior work unless permits are required. Do the plans show work requiring permits?" "The plumbing and electrical phases would. Decorative removal may not." I looked at the work schedule. So they could start removing interior material before the hearing. That would be a property matter. I understand. The city had acknowledged my documents. That was the practical win. It also left the front door open unless I closed it myself. I drove to South C Street before dark. Kristen's SUV was in the driveway. A dark blue pickup was parked behind it. The man beside the pickup wore a canvas jacket. He was measuring the porch with a tape. I walked up the path. "Are you the contractor?" I asked. He looked toward the front door. "I'm doing an estimate." "For Kristen?" "Yes." "Has she told you the owner hasn't authorized work?" He pulled in the tape. "She said her father owns the place. The Diane Hamilton Residence Trust owns it. I'm the trustee." He looked uncomfortable. "I'm not getting in the middle of a family thing. I'm not asking you to. I'm telling you that no work is authorized." Kristen opened the front door. "What are you doing?" "Delivering the notice." "I received your email. The paper copy includes the deed and trust certificate." The contractor looked between us. "I'll come back another time," he said. Kristen stepped onto the porch. "We're almost done." He didn't wait. He climbed into his truck and left. Kristen watched him drive away. That was humiliating. He needed accurate information. He was measuring. For what? A possible railing. The application doesn't mention a railing. Not everything is in the application. That's the problem. Dad appeared behind her. "Are we doing this outside?" Kristen held the door open. I entered. The living room furniture had been pushed toward the center. Blue painter's tape marked sections of the window trim and the built-in cabinet. Small handwritten labels had been placed on the tape. Remove. Salvage, if possible. Replace with painted millwork. I set my folder on the dining table. "Who marked this?" "The designer," Kristen said. "You told me they were cleaning. This is planning." I took out my phone and photographed every wall. Dad followed me. "Derek told you to do this?" "No." "Then why are you taking pictures?" "Because the trust is responsible for the property." Kristen pulled the tape from one window. "There. Happy? Leave the rest." "Why?" "I need a record of what was marked." She stared at me. "You think I'm going to steal the walls? I think you plan to remove original woodwork. It's dark and dated. Mom protected it for years. Mom also lived with carpet in the bathroom until we made her replace it. That isn't the same. She wasn't against every change. I didn't say she was." Dad opened my folder and looked at the notice. "You sent this to the city?" "Yes." "You made me look like a liar. You signed as owner. I live here. We've had this conversation." He slapped the paper onto the table. "Then have it again." "No." That surprised him. It surprised me too. I finished photographing the cabinet. Kristen crossed her arms. The planning office called me. "What did they say?" "That you're challenging the application. I'm refusing consent. They said I can submit a response. You can. I will." Dad looked at her. "What does that mean?" "It means we continue to the hearing." I put my phone away. "Neither of you has permission to begin work." "We don't need your permission to clean," Dad said. "You need my permission to alter trust property for a commercial project." Kristen picked up the notice. "You really think you can walk in here with a piece of paper and control everything?" "No. I think the piece of paper controls what all three of us can do. You'll back down." She said it calmly. "Why would I?" Because you won't stand in a public room and take Dad's home away over some wood trim. Dad looked at me. That was the pressure they were counting on, not ownership, not the application, me. They believed I would accept any private insult to avoid looking cruel in public. I'm not taking his home today, I said. I'm telling you to stop work. Kristen placed the notice back in the folder. We'll let the board hear both sides. The board cannot give you my consent. Then you can explain that to everyone. She walked upstairs. A door opened above us, then another. Dad turned away and started moving the living room chairs back toward the wall. I photographed the remaining tape, took my folder, and left. The next morning, Kristen submitted a written response to the city. She did not withdraw the application. She confirmed that she intended to proceed to the public hearing. Her response was 6 pages long. She described my objection as an internal administrative issue. She said Dad had occupied the house for decades and fully supported the project. She expected the trustee matter to be resolved before final approval. She did not explain how she expected that to happen. She also asked the city to keep the hearing date because delaying it would cause financial harm. The planning clerk forwarded the response to me. I called her. "Does this correct the owner authorization?" I asked. No. The applicant requested that staff continue reviewing the land use questions while she resolves ownership consent. Can she do that? She can request it. That isn't what I asked. The clerk took a breath. The board may hear an incomplete application. Whether it can approve that application is a different question. So Kristen gets a public hearing even without consent. If she does not withdraw, I thanked her. That afternoon, the city posted the hearing notice near Dad's front steps. He called before I left work. "There's an orange sign in my yard. It's the public notice. Take it down." I didn't put it there. Your name is on it. My name is listed as trustee. People can see it from the street. That's the purpose. He lowered his voice. The woman next door asked if I was opening a hotel. What did you tell her? That it's none of her business. The application makes it her business. Kristen said the sign would be smaller. I looked at my phone. What do you want me to do? Tell the city this is resolved. It isn't. You're enjoying this. No, you finally get to be important. That landed harder than I wanted it to. I stood from my desk and closed my office door. Dad, I've been important to this house every time you needed a bill paid. That isn't what I meant. What did you mean? You like having authority. I'm refusing one use. You're embarrassing me in front of my neighbors. Kristen requested the hearing because you wouldn't work with her privately. She filed before she told me. He went quiet. That fact was difficult for him, so he stepped around it. She has people depending on this project. Who? Contractors. Her designer. I told both of you no work. She heard you. That wasn't my question. He hung up. The hearing notice stayed in place. On Monday morning, I called the insurance company. I told them the proposed business use had not been authorized and no renovations had been approved by the trust. The representative added a note to the file. Will the property remain occupied? She asked. Yes. Any active construction? Not with my permission. There was a pause. That wasn't the question. I looked at my own notes and almost smiled. No active construction that I know of. If work begins, we need notice, especially if walls, wiring, plumbing, or permanent interior features are altered. What happens if work begins without trustee approval? We'd need to review the risk. Would coverage be affected? It could be. That gave me another obligation. I could not treat unauthorized work as a family disagreement. If I knew about it and stayed quiet, the insurance file could become inaccurate. I emailed Dad and Kristen after the call. No work is authorized. The insurer requires notice before any alteration. Please confirm no contractor has been given access. Kristen replied, We are not doing permitted construction. Dad did not reply. Her wording bothered me. I asked, Are you doing unpermitted interior work? She didn't answer. Tuesday morning, I had a medical appointment in Livingston. When it ended, I drove toward the interstate. At the last intersection, I turned toward South C Street. I told myself I was checking the public notice. The orange sign was still there. A white work van stood at the curb. Its rear doors were open. I parked behind it. When I stepped onto the porch, I heard a pry bar strike wood. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the living room smelled like dust. 2 long sections of window casing lay on the floor. The built-in cabinet doors had been removed. One of the side panels leaned against the wall. A man knelt near the second window with a flat bar in his hand. He was not the man who had measured the porch. He looked up. "Can I help you?" "Put the tool down, please." He stood slowly. "Who are you?" "I'm Sarah Hamilton. I'm trustee for this property." He glanced toward the kitchen. Alan let us in. "Where is he?" "Upstairs. How many people are here?" "Just me and my helper. He went for lunch." "Is your supervisor coming back?" "I'm the supervisor." I took the written notice from my bag. This work was not authorized. He wiped one hand on his pants before taking it. "We have a signed work order." "Signed by whom?" "Kristen Wagner. She doesn't own the property." He read the notice. "She said there was a zoning issue." "This isn't zoning." "The owner refused consent." Dad came down the stairs. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing. I live here. You let contractors in after I told you not to. They're not contractors. They're doing removal." The man looked at Dad. "We're contractors." Dad frowned at him. "You said this didn't need a permit." "It doesn't." "That doesn't mean you aren't a contractor," I said. Dad came into the living room. "This is my home." "Yes. You don't get to walk in and order people around. I'm stopping unauthorized work on trust property. They've barely started." I looked at the wall. The original casing had been pried away. Plaster showed around the window. One piece had split near the corner. "Who told you this could begin?" I asked the contractor. "Kristen gave us the first payment. Alan provided access." "When?" "This morning." "When did she sign the work order?" "Last Friday. That was the day after she received my written notice." "May I see it?" He hesitated. "You need to ask Kristen. I'm asking the person performing work on property I administer." He removed his phone and called someone. "Hey, I've got the trustee here." He listened. "No, she has paperwork." Another pause. "I'm not touching anything else until this is clear." He ended the call. "She's coming." "Good." I photographed the room from the doorway. Then I moved closer and photographed each removed piece. Dad stepped in front of me. "Stop taking pictures of my living room." I photographed it before work began. "I'm documenting the change. You make everything cold." I lowered the phone. "What would make this warmer? You could talk to me." "I did." "You delivered a notice. After you signed away control you didn't have." His jaw tightened. "I didn't sign away anything. Your letter approves commercial use and renovations. It says Kristen can apply." "It says more than that." "She wrote it. You signed it." He looked at the removed wood. "I trusted her. So did I." The contractor cleared his throat. "If you want, I can stack the pieces in the dining room." "Can they be reinstalled?" I asked. "Most of them." "What about the split section?" "We can repair it. It won't be invisible." "Is anything missing?" "No." "Was anything taken to the van?" "Some cabinet hardware. It's in a box. Bring it inside, please." He did. That was the first useful result of the morning. The wood had been damaged, but most of it remained on site. Nothing had been hauled away. I photographed the hardware box and counted the hinges. The contractor returned the work order on his phone. Kristen said, "You can read it." I photographed the screen. The order covered removal of window trim, partial cabinet dismantling, wall preparation and disposal. It did not include restoration. The first payment was listed as non-refundable once labor began. Kristen had created her own deadline by sending them into the house. Her SUV pulled up 6 minutes later. She entered without taking off her shoes. "What have you done?" she asked. I stopped the work. "You called them unauthorized." "They are." "You spoke to my contractor as if I hired criminals. I told him the trust did not approve the work." Dad pointed toward the window. "Look what this has become." Kristen looked at the exposed plaster. Her face changed. "Why did you take all of it off?" The contractor folded his arms. "That's what removal means. I thought you were testing one section. The work order says both windows." She looked at me. You confused them. I arrived after this was removed. You had no reason to come here. The insurer requires me to monitor alterations. You called the insurance company? I answered their form. Her cheeks flushed. You are trying to kill this project. I refused it. That part wasn't unclear. She walked to the built-in cabinet and touched the exposed edge. We can put it back. The contractor says most of it can be reinstalled. There. So nothing happened. A section split. We'll repair it. With whose money? Mine. You already committed $24,000. That isn't your concern. It becomes my concern when you use that commitment to pressure the trust. She turned to the contractor. Can you give us a minute? He looked at me. Are we done for today? Yes, I said. Kristen answered at the same time. No. He held up both hands. I need one answer. I gave him my certified trust certificate. The trust owns the house. I am directing you to stop. He read the first page, then handed it back. I'm stopping. Kristen stared at him. I hired you. To work on a property you said your father owned. My father authorized access. I'm not sorting this out. He gathered his tools. Before leaving, he took a silver key from his pocket. Kristen gave me this. I held out my hand. He placed it in my palm. Kristen stepped forward. That's my key. It was issued for contractor access, I said. I paid to have it cut. I'll reimburse you $3. The contractor carried his tools outside. His helper returned while he was loading the van. They left together without speaking to us again. I locked the front door after them. Dad stood in the living room with his arms at his sides. You made me look helpless in my own home. I told you not to let them in. I don't answer to you. No. But use of the house answers to the trust. Kristen picked up the hardware box. You're paying for the lost labor. No, you interfered with my contract. Your contract doesn't bind the trust. She set the box down. You think you're untouchable because Derek agrees with you. Derek didn't stop the work. I did. That silenced her for a moment. I posted a copy of the written notice inside the front door. Then I photographed it. Dad watched me. You're really doing this? Yes. What happens now? The wood gets protected. The damage gets assessed. No one returns without written approval. And the hearing? That's Kristen's decision. She's going. Kristen looked directly at me. Yes, I am. I gathered the removed casing and laid it flat on towels in the dining room. It took nearly an hour. Dad went upstairs. Kristen stayed in the kitchen, sending messages. When I finished, I called Derek from the porch. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, "The question is no longer whether they might violate the use condition." I looked through the front window at the exposed plaster. I know. You have actual work after written non-consent, tied to the commercial plan. What do I have to do? First, protect the property. Then you have to decide whether you're willing to enforce the condition Diane gave you. I looked through the front window again. Dad had come downstairs. He was standing beside the exposed window with one hand against the wall. I need to know what enforcement means, I said. It means you document the breach, prevent more work, and preserve your options under the trust, including ending Dad's occupancy. Yes. I lowered my voice. I wanted to stop a guest house. I didn't want to remove him. Those are separate decisions. They don't feel separate. They won't. I heard the front door open behind me. I have to go, I said. Dad stepped onto the porch. Was that Derek? Yes. What did he tell you? To protect the house. From me. From unauthorized work. He closed the door behind him. The orange hearing notice moved slightly in the wind. You had no right to stop those men, he said. I had the authority and the duty. Same speech every time. It's the same answer because the facts haven't changed. He pointed through the window. I let them in. I know. So if somebody violated your precious trust, it was me. I didn't answer. He waited, probably expecting me to soften it. When I didn't, he said, "Good. Now you can punish me instead of blaming Kristen. This isn't punishment. You've been waiting years for this. For what? To be the one in charge." I looked at him. His coat was unzipped. He had come outside without gloves. The skin around his eyes looked tired. "I spent years trying not to act in charge," I said. "That must have been difficult. It was a mistake." He gave a short laugh. "You hear yourself?" "Yes." "No, you hear an officer. You don't hear a daughter." "What would a daughter do?" "She'd help her sister." I did. With paperwork, with Mom's bills, claims, and accounts. She would have traded all of that for you being here. You don't know that. I was married to her for 46 years, and she still chose me as trustee. His face went hard. There were certain facts he treated like insults. Mom choosing me was one of them. "Get off my porch," he said. I stayed still. "Dad," I said, "leave. I need access Thursday morning. A restoration carpenter is coming. You arranged that already?" "I'm arranging it now. You'll pay for it." "The person responsible for the damage should pay. That would be you. None of this would have happened if you'd signed." I walked down the steps. Behind me, he said, "Don't come back unless you call first." I turned. "I will give notice when I need trustee access. I won't ask permission." He went inside and locked the door. The lock had never sounded that loud before. I drove back to Bozeman and called a carpenter Derek recommended. She specialized in older interiors and could meet me Thursday morning. Her inspection fee was $600. I gave her my personal card. The trust had enough for taxes, insurance, and ordinary maintenance. It did not have enough cash sitting around for a family fight. Any large repair would either come from me temporarily or wait until the property was sold. That night, Kristen sent me an invoice from her contractor. The amount due for interrupted labor was $1,400. Her message said, "You caused this. Pay it." I replied, "The trust did not hire him and will not pay." She called immediately. "You told me to send you the costs. I asked how much you'd committed. You stopped paid work. I stopped unauthorized work. You keep using that word as if it makes the bill disappear. Your contract says labor became non-refundable once it began." Exactly. You started it after receiving written non-consent. I started removal that doesn't require a permit. This isn't about permits. It will be when we're in front of the board. No, the board handles land use. The trust handles consent. Derek taught you a new sentence. "I'm ending this call." "Wait." I stayed on the line. She spoke more quietly. "Meet me tomorrow." "Where?" "The coffee shop near Dad's." "What are we discussing?" "A solution." I knew what that word usually meant in our family. I would absorb the problem and everyone else would call the silence peace. Still, I agreed. The next day, Kristen was already seated when I arrived. She had 2 coffees on the table. Mine was black the way I drank it. I sat across from her. She pushed 1 cup toward me. "I'm not trying to fight," she said. "Neither am I. You made a contractor leave Dad's house." "Yes." That looked like a fight. "What's your solution?" She opened her leather folder. For a second, I expected her to produce corrected plans. Instead, she handed me a 1-page proposal. My name was listed beside financial administration, insurance, vendor payments, and tax reporting. Kristen's name was listed beside ownership, operations, design, and guest services. "Ownership?" I asked. "Future ownership. Based on what?" "Dad's promise. He cannot promise trust property." "I understand the technical issue. It isn't technical." "Fine. I understand the trust issue." She tapped my side of the page. "You'd have a formal role. I'd pay you once the business was operating. I already have a formal role. Not in the business. There is no business at that address." "There could be." I slid the proposal back. "You filed without me, spent money without me, and began work after I refused consent. Now you want me to handle the records. You're good at it. That isn't the compliment you think it is." She leaned back. "Why can't we use what each of us is good at? Because you're assigning yourself a house. Dad wants me to have it. Mom did not give it to him." Her jaw tightened. "There it is again." "Mom?" "Yes. Mom created the trust. You weren't here when she needed help getting out of bed. No, you weren't here when she woke up confused. No, you weren't here when Dad sat in the garage because he couldn't cry in front of her. I wrapped both hands around the coffee cup. No, I said. Kristen looked surprised. She had expected a defense. I wasn't there for everything, I continued. You were. Then why are you acting like what I did doesn't matter? It matters. It doesn't create ownership. To you, nothing creates ownership unless it has a stamp. In this case, that's correct. She looked toward the window. Dad promised me the house after the funeral. Why? Because he knew what I gave up. What did you say? I told him I couldn't keep putting my life on hold. Mom had already died. Care doesn't end the day somebody dies. Dad was alone. The house was falling apart. There were months of things to handle. I handled the estate paperwork from Bozeman. I let that pass. What did Dad promise exactly? That I could make the house mine, that he supported the guest house, that you'd deal with the paperwork. There it was. My role had been included from the beginning. I just hadn't been included in the conversation. Did he say I had agreed? No. Did you ask whether my consent was required? I knew it would come up. That isn't an answer. I thought once you saw a complete plan, you'd stop being difficult. Difficult, rigid, whatever word you prefer. I took a drink of coffee. What happens to Dad if the guest house opens? He stays. Where? Downstairs. The application doesn't show a residential suite. We would adjust that later. Where downstairs? The back room could become a bedroom. The back room is part of the proposed breakfast area. We're still designing. Does Dad know? He knows he can stay. That isn't what I asked. She closed her folder. We cannot operate around him forever. I set down the cup. What does that mean? It means eventually he may prefer an apartment. Has he said that? No. Have you said it to him? He's 72. He cannot maintain that entire house. The trust pays major maintenance. You handle it after something breaks. So the guest house is temporary while Dad lives there. No. Then Dad's occupancy is temporary. She looked away. The true scale of it became clear. Kristen wasn't only trying to build a business inside Dad's home. The business required his home to stop functioning as his home. Dad believed he was giving her something after he no longer needed it. Kristen was already spending money as if that time had arrived. You need to tell him, I said. Tell him what? That your plan eventually moves him out. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. I said he may prefer something smaller, after guests and staff occupy most of the house. You always make everything sound cruel. I'm repeating the sequence. She stood and gathered her folder. I offered you a way to be part of this. You offered me the work. I offered you respect. No. You offered me a desk in a house you were taking. She left her untouched coffee on the table and walked out. I stayed another 10 minutes. My original goal had been simple. Correct the application, stop unauthorized renovations, keep Dad in his home, and return everything to normal. Normal was no longer enough. Normal meant Dad treating the house as his to promise. It meant Kristen treating my consent as a delayed signature. It meant me solving each practical problem while avoiding the one decision Mom had trusted me to make. Thursday morning, I returned with the restoration carpenter. I had emailed notice to Dad the day before. He did not answer, but he opened the door. He looked at the carpenter's tool bag. How long? About an hour, she said. I was asking Sarah, as long as the inspection takes. He walked upstairs without another word. The carpenter examined the windows and cabinet. She matched each loose piece to the photographs I had taken before removal. These pictures helped, she said. Otherwise, I'd be guessing where two of these returns belonged. Can it all be restored? Yes. The split section needs a repair. The plaster needs patching. Some nails tore through the wood. How much? For careful reinstallation, repair, and finish matching, more than $7,000. I looked at the exposed wall. Can we protect it for now? She recommended wrapping and labeling every piece, removing the hardware from the cardboard box, and storing everything flat in a dry room. I helped her do it. We spent nearly 2 hours on the floor. Dust worked into my sleeves. One cabinet panel was heavier than it looked. By the time we lowered it onto padded supports, my back had started to ache. The temporary protection cost another $900. I paid it. Dad came downstairs while I signed the invoice. "You're charging me for that?" he asked. "Not today." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm preserving the property while I decide what enforcement requires." He looked at the wrapped wood. "Kristen said the project would improve the house. Her project eventually requires you to move." His eyes shifted toward me. "What are you talking about? Ask her where you live after the guest house is fully operating. She said I stay here. Ask her where." He stared at me for several seconds. Then he said, "Leave her alone." He went back upstairs. I carried the invoice outside and called Derek. "If they continue," I said, "I'm prepared to enforce the trust, including the occupancy condition." I looked at the house. Yes. That answer cost me the version of victory I'd been protecting. I was no longer trying to make everything normal again. I was trying to make Mom's instructions real. The next morning, I stopped calling Dad for answers. I called the insurance company instead. I sent the photographs, the work order, and the restoration assessment. I explained that the contractor had stopped and the removed material was secured inside the house. The representative reviewed everything while I waited. "We need an inspection," she said. "When?" "Within 7 days. I can arrange access. If the inspector finds active work, the policy may be changed. There won't be active work. You sound certain." "I am." After that, I called a locksmith. I explained that an unauthorized contractor had received a copied key. Dad still had full residential occupancy, so he could not be locked out or denied ordinary use. The locksmith understood. "We can rekey the exterior doors and provide numbered keys," he said. "You'll know how many exist." "How soon?" "Friday afternoon." I booked it. My third call was to Derek. "I'm rekeying the house," I said. "Does Alan retain access?" "Yes." "He gets 2 keys." "Why 2? One for him and one spare." "Good." "Kristen doesn't get one." "Are you preventing her from visiting?" "No. Dad can let her in. She cannot hold a key or give one to contractors. That's reasonable after the unauthorized work. I'm also requesting that all planning documents identify the trust as owner." "Good. I'm done arguing about whether Mom loved one of us more." Derek was quiet for a moment. "That isn't a legal issue." "I know." It was the first time I had said that without wanting him to tell me I was right. I drafted an access notice at work during lunch. It was shorter than the first one. Dad retained full access for residential use. Ordinary guests were allowed. No contractor, designer, consultant, or business vendor could enter without my written approval. No key could be copied or transferred. I sent it to Dad and Kristen. Dad replied, "This is still my home." I wrote, "Yes, this protects your residential use." He did not answer. Kristen sent a longer message. "You are treating Dad like a tenant, and me like a stranger. I cared for Mom while you built a career. Now you're using a document to control the family from a distance." I read it once. Then I saved it with the other records. I did not respond. Friday afternoon, the locksmith met me at the house. Dad stood on the porch with his arms folded. "You hired someone else without asking me," he said. "I gave notice." "That isn't asking, no." The locksmith set his case beside the door. Dad looked at him. "Do you need me to leave?" "No, sir," he said. "I'll need to test each lock from both sides." Dad moved out of the way. The front lock was old but solid. The locksmith removed the cylinder and placed the parts on a cloth. He worked without rushing. I stayed nearby. Dad followed me into the dining room. "Kristen has a key," he said. "She used it to provide contractor access. She gave a key to a man she hired. She did not have authority to hire him for this house. She needs to come and go. You can let her in." "What if I fall? Call emergency services. What if she needs to bring groceries? You can open the door." He stared at me. "You have an answer for everything." I planned for those questions before I came. That's not normal, no. Unauthorized commercial work isn't normal. The locksmith moved to the back door. Dad lowered his voice. Your sister thinks you're trying to force her out of the family. Kristen doesn't live here. You know what I mean. I'm not discussing what she thinks anymore. I'm controlling property access. You sound proud of that. I'm being clear. His face changed. I had removed his usual opening. He could not make me defend my love for Mom, my distance, or my career. I was no longer asking him to recognize what I had done. He didn't know where to move the conversation. Finally, he said, I won't live under guard. You aren't under guard. You're counting keys. Yes? That's insulting. A copied key was given to a contractor after written non-consent. I let him in. That makes the count more necessary, not less. He walked upstairs. The locksmith finished in 40 minutes. He gave me 4 numbered keys and a small card with the key code. I handed Dad 2 keys. One is your spare, I said. He turned one over in his palm. Where are the others? I have one. The 4th stays sealed with the trust records. You get 2, I get 2. Yes. My own daughter doesn't get one. Kristen is not an occupant or trustee. She's family. She can visit. He closed his fingers around the keys. This is what you wanted. No, it's what the unauthorized access required. He went inside and shut the door. I tested my key once. It worked. That small action changed the balance more than any argument had. For the first time, the house could not be entered for project work without somebody making a deliberate choice to violate the notice. The insurer's inspector arrived Monday. Dad let us in. He stayed in the kitchen while she examined the exposed plaster, the wrapped wood, and the cabinet. She checked the electrical panel and photographed the stairs. Any plumbing opened? She asked. No. Any wiring disturbed? No. Any walls removed? No. She pointed to the split casing. Who's repairing this? A restoration carpenter provided an assessment. Work scheduled. Not yet. I wanted the property stabilized first. She looked at the labels on the wrapped wood. You did this? I helped. It's organized. The carpenter knew what she was doing. The inspector checked the dining room window and made another note. I don't see an immediate coverage issue if work remains stopped, she said. Dad spoke from the kitchen doorway. Work is stopped. The inspector turned. You're the resident? Yes. Do you understand that commercial renovation is not approved under this policy? He looked at me before answering. I understand what my daughter says. I'm asking whether you understand the insurance condition. His mouth tightened. Yes. The inspector wrote that down. That was the visible success I needed. Dad had acknowledged the condition in front of someone who had no interest in our family argument. The inspector left after confirming the policy could remain unchanged. I had to submit a repair schedule within 30 days, but the immediate risk was contained. Dad stood beside the front window. You brought her here to corner me. I brought her because the insurer required an inspection. You enjoyed making me answer. No. You always look calm when someone else is uncomfortable. I picked up my folder. I'll send you the repair schedule when I have it. Don't bother. I'm required to. Then send your required email. I left without trying to repair the conversation. Later that day, the planning office posted its staff review online. I read it at my desk. The report described the proposed use, parking concerns, room count, and neighborhood notice. It also identified a threshold problem. The recorded owner was the Diane Hamilton Residence Trust. The applicant had not provided authorization from the successor trustee. My written non-consent was attached. The report did not recommend approval or denial. It said the application remained incomplete as to owner consent. I called the clerk. Will that language be in the board packet? Yes. Along with the trust certificate? Yes. Can it be removed if Kristen objects? No. It's part of the file. That was the second part of my strategy. I did not need the city to judge my family. I needed the public record to be accurate before anyone entered the hearing room. Has Kristen provided anything new? I asked. Not yet. Has she withdrawn? No. Then I'll attend. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, Kristen emailed me. She had copied Dad. The subject line said, "Family resolution before hearing." Her message asked me to attend a private meeting at the house with her designer. She wanted to revise the project enough to secure my consent. I replied with one sentence: "I do not consent to commercial use of the house." She answered almost immediately, "That is not a meeting." I did not respond. An hour later, Dad called. "You won't even sit down?" "We've sat down. She's offering changes." "I don't want a smaller guest house. You haven't heard the changes. My decision isn't based on room count. What is it based on? The trust and what happened after I refused. So there's no way back. There's a way back to residential use. That's not what I asked. It's the answer." He breathed heavily into the phone. "Kristen has too much money tied up in this. I warned her before the work started. She says the city fees and designer deposits can't be recovered. That doesn't create consent. She could lose everything." "Not everything. Easy for you to say." "No, it isn't. You have a salary. You have the army. You have your own house. And Kristen has the same legal interest in the eventual net proceeds that I do." "Eventually," he said, "after I'm dead." The words sat between us. The trust did not require his death before a sale. It required his occupancy to remain within its conditions. He knew that because Mom had explained it. I knew it because I had read it. Neither of us said it. Dad broke the silence. "If you do this to her, don't expect us to pretend nothing changed." "I don't." He ended the call. By evening, Kristen had submitted another letter to the planning office. This one was not about parking or room count. It described me as an absent trustee, using technical control to block the wishes of the resident and the daughter who had provided local care. She asked the board to hear testimony from the family and neighbors before deciding whether owner authorization was truly unresolved. The clerk added her letter to the public file. My strategy had worked. The locks were controlled. The insurance remained intact. The city record named the actual owner and showed my refusal. Now Kristen knew exactly what she had to attack. She could not produce my consent, so she intended to make me ashamed of withholding it. The first call came the next morning. It was the woman who lived beside Dad. "I hope I'm not interfering," she said. "You're responding to a public application. That isn't interference." "Well, Kristen stopped by." I waited. She said, "You may force Alan to leave." Did she say why? She said, "You want to sell the house." "I have not decided to sell the house." "So you aren't evicting him?" "I haven't given him notice." The distinction made her quiet. "That sounds like it could happen," she said. "It could, if the trust conditions require enforcement. Alan says he's lived there longer than you've been in the Army." "That's true. He seems frightened." I looked at the calendar on my wall. "Did he call you?" "No." Kristen did. That answered the useful question. "What is she asking you to do?" "Write to the board." She sent a sample. "Have you sent it?" "Not yet." "Read the trust certificate in the public file before you decide. I'm not trying to take sides." "I understand." She thanked me and ended the call. By lunch, 3 public comments had appeared on the planning page. All 3 used the phrase, "aging in place." The guest house would supposedly provide income so Dad could remain in his home. My refusal was described as a technical dispute between an absentee trustee and the resident family. Kristen had turned her plan around. The application originally made Dad's future unclear. Now she was presenting the business as the only way to protect him. The city record still showed the trust as owner. It still showed my non-consent. But anyone reading the comments would see something else first. An older widower wanted to stay home. One daughter was helping him. The other was using paperwork to stop them. It was simple. It was also effective. That afternoon, the restoration carpenter called. "I can start the repair in 3 weeks," she said. "I need a deposit to reserve the time." "How much?" $3,500. I looked at my bank balance. The inspection, temporary protection, and travel had already cost me $1,500. The repair deposit would come from savings I kept for my own house. Send the agreement, I said. Are you sure? You can wait for the insurance company to respond. The policy requires a schedule. I'll send it. I paid the deposit that evening. Then I emailed the invoice to Kristen. This cost resulted from work begun after written non-consent. I expect you to reimburse it. Her answer arrived an hour later. I will not pay for restoration you chose. I saved that too. Dad's spare numbered key appeared the following day. Kristen let herself into the house while I was there to measure the wrapped cabinet panels. She opened the front door, saw me, and stopped. Dad gave you his spare, I said. He wants me to have it. The access notice says keys cannot be transferred. He has 2 keys. He gave me one. That's a transfer. It's his home. Give it back. No. I straightened from the cabinet. What are you here to do? Visit Dad. He isn't here. He went to the grocery store. Then you aren't visiting him. She closed the door behind her. I'm collecting some of my design materials. The boards are gone. They're upstairs. No contractor access. I'm not a contractor. You're the applicant. I'm also his daughter. So am I. She walked past me. I followed her upstairs. 3 design boards leaned against the wall in the front bedroom. Kristen picked them up. A stack of printed photographs sat on the dresser. I recognized the exposed living room wall. What are those for? I asked. The hearing. You photographed the damage. I photographed the current condition. After you ordered the removal, after you stopped the improvement halfway through. There it was. The missing wood was no longer proof that she ignored the notice. It was going to become proof that I had left Dad living in a damaged house. The work order required disposal, I said, but nothing was disposed of, because I arrived. That's your version. The contractor confirmed it. He'll say you interrupted a job. He'll also say you lacked owner consent. She lifted the boards. Are you going to block the stairs? No. Good. She walked downstairs and carried everything to her SUV. Before she left, I held out my hand. The key. Ask Dad. I'm asking you. And I said no. She got into her vehicle. I wrote down the key number as she drove away. My access control had lasted less than a week. Dad had deliberately handed her the one thing I'd told him not to transfer. I could rekey the house again. He could give her another copy again. The problem was no longer the lock. That evening, Dad called. If you make Kristen return that key, I'll give her yours. You don't have mine. I'll call the locksmith myself. Then you'll be creating another access problem. No, I'll be acting like a man in his own home. You can have ordinary guests. She is not an ordinary guest. You're right. She's the person pursuing unauthorized control. She's my daughter. So am I. Then act like one. I became quiet. He continued. You're paying strangers to put back wood nobody wanted. Mom wanted it. Your mother isn't here. No, you keep using her wishes against people who are alive. I'm following the trust. You're hiding behind it. I'm standing in front of it. That's what you're angry about. He breathed into the phone. I wrote to the board. I assumed you would. You haven't read it yet. No, I told them you plan to terminate my right to live here. I haven't issued notice. Derek told you that you could. How do you know what Derek told me? Kristen knows what the trust says. Then she also knows what triggers termination. You're threatening me. I have never threatened you. You put it in writing. I refused commercial use and contractor access. You wrote that violating the trust has consequences. The notice did not mention termination. It didn't have to. I sat down. What do you want, Dad? I want you to sign the consent. No. Then I want you to step down as trustee. No. You'd rather put me out. I would rather you stop treating occupancy like ownership. Don't call me again. He ended the call. I did not call back. His public comment appeared that night. He wrote that he was 72, had lived in the house for 34 years, and wanted Kristen's project. He said she had cared for Mom and continued caring for him. He said I had been absent for most family decisions because of my career. Then he wrote that I had threatened to end his occupancy and sell the home if he did not accept my authority. That part was not true. it was also close enough to the trust's possible consequence that a denial would sound evasive. The comments below his letter were not public, but the planning clerk emailed me the updated file the next morning. 8 neighbors had submitted support for Kristen. 2 opposed the guest house because of traffic and parking. Neither mentioned the trust. I still had the legal advantage. I had lost the simple story. At work, I closed my office door and read Dad's letter again. The phrase "absent from most family decisions" stayed with me. My reserve service had taken me away. That was true. 2 deployments had taken me farther. Training weekends, annual exercises, and late schedule changes had cost me holidays and ordinary Saturdays. Dad had once introduced me as Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton at a veterans' dinner. He had stood straighter when he said it. Now the same service made me the daughter who had left. My phone rang. It was Kristen. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to know whether you read Dad's letter." "I did. He wrote it himself." "I believe you. You made him feel like he had to. Did you send him the sample language?" I helped him organize his thoughts. "That wasn't my question." "Yes." I looked out the window. "You included the sentence about me threatening termination. He understands the trust. I never threatened him. You told him enforcement could remove him. I told Derek that privately. Dad figured it out. Did Derek speak to you?" "No." That answer came quickly. "What are you hoping the board will do?" I asked. "Hear us. They cannot create trustee consent. They can make you explain yourself. I've already filed my explanation." "No, you filed documents. I want you to say it in front of Dad. I want everyone to see what you're doing. You think public pressure will change my decision. I think you won't humiliate him in a crowded room." She was right about one thing. I did not want to. "I'll see you at the hearing," I said. "Bring your uniform if you want. It won't make you right. I wasn't planning to." She ended the call. That evening, I met Derek at his office. He had printed the updated public comments. Dad's letter sat on top. "He has made the potential consequence public," Derek said. "I know. Do you want to respond before the hearing?" "Only with facts. You should correct the claim that you issued a termination threat. I can say no notice has been issued. That's accurate. But the trust allows it." "Yes, and his signed authorization, followed by contractor access, may satisfy the condition." "Yes." I looked at the trust. "What happens if I invoke it?" "You give 60 days written notice. During that time, Alan retains residential access. You arrange repairs, then sell the property through an ordinary sale, and the net proceeds protected equally for you and Kristen. I cannot use termination to force them to withdraw, then take it back. No, it is not bargaining language. That was the price. The condition could protect the house, but it could not preserve Dad's occupancy after I enforced it. It could stop Kristen from taking private control, but it also required me to sell rather than keep the property for myself. I would pay for repairs now. Dad would lose the home he had occupied for decades. Kristen would lose her deposits and the private transfer she expected. I would lose whatever remained of my place in the family. "What do you want me to prepare?" Derek asked. A factual response for the board. "And regarding termination? Prepare the 60-day notice." He studied my face. "Are you directing me to issue it?" "No, not yet. When will you decide?" "After the hearing." He nodded. I signed the authorization for him to draft it. Then I took a clean copy of the trust certificate and placed it in my folder. Kristen had chosen the public room because she believed shame would make me surrender. Dad had put our relationship into the record because he believed I still needed his approval more than I needed to enforce Mom's conditions. I did need his approval. I was simply prepared to continue without it. The draft arrived the next morning. I opened it at my kitchen table before work. It was 3 pages. The first page identified the trust and Dad's right of residential occupancy. The second listed the signed authorization, the commercial application, my written non-consent, and the interior work. The last page gave 60 days to leave. I read that page several times. The language was not angry. It did not mention the comments, the insults, or who had cared for Mom. It did not say Kristen was selfish or Dad was ungrateful. It simply turned the trust's condition into a date. I called Derek. "Did you write this as if I'm definitely issuing it?" "You asked me to prepare an enforceable notice." "I know. Do you want different wording?" "No." "What concerns you?" "It sounds final." "It would be." I looked at Dad's name. "Could I issue a warning first?" "You already did. I mean a warning that specifically mentions termination." "You could." "Would that be using it as a threat?" "That depends on your purpose. My purpose would be to make them withdraw." "Then, yes." I closed the document. "I don't want to do that." "Good." "Why good?" "Because Diane did not give you the condition to win arguments. She gave it to protect the property and preserve the final interests. So I either enforce it or I don't." "Yes." "Can I wait until after the hearing?" "Yes." "Continue protecting the property. Do not authorize further work." I printed the draft and placed it in my folder. That afternoon, I went to the county records office. I requested a certified copy of the current deed and asked the clerk to confirm whether any later deed had been recorded. She searched the address and Mom's name. "The most recent deed is the transfer to the Diane Hamilton Residence Trust in 2019, she said. "Nothing after that, no later transfer." "What about Alan Hamilton?" "He is not listed as owner on the current deed." She stamped the copy and attached a certification page. It was not new evidence. It did not give me new authority. It removed the last practical uncertainty. Dad had never received title. Kristen had never received title. There was no later document sitting in a county file that changed Mom's plan. I paid the fee and carried the certified deed outside. On the courthouse steps, I called Derek. "The record is clean," I said. I expected it to be. I needed to see it. That was sensible. "Now I want you to verify the termination condition against what actually happened, not what we think happened. Come in tomorrow." We met in his conference room the next afternoon. He had arranged the documents in date order. First was the recorded trust, then the certificate showing I became successor trustee after Mom died, then Dad's authorization for Kristen, then the conditional use application, then my written non-consent, then Kristen's contractor work order, signed after my refusal. Last came the photographs of the removed woodwork. Derek opened the trust to the condition. "Read it aloud," he said. I did. "The right of occupancy could end if the occupant attempted to assign possession or control, authorized prohibited commercial use, or allowed conversion contrary to trustee direction." I finished and looked at him. Dad's letter attempts to give Kristen control over permits, renovations, and business use. Yes, the application relies on that authority. Yes, he allowed contractors inside after my written refusal. Yes. Does that satisfy the condition? In my professional judgment, yes. Not may. Based on the documents you have now, yes. That was the verification I needed. I had not created a violation by objecting. The violation existed in Dad's signed attempt to transfer control, and his decision to allow commercial conversion after consent was refused. What if he says he didn't understand what he signed? I asked. He may say that. Would it matter? It might matter to how you judge his intent. It does not erase what the authorization did. What if Kristen says the work was decorative? The condition addresses conversion and control, not only permitted construction. What if they restore everything before the hearing? That may reduce damage. It does not remove the signed attempt or the work that occurred. I sat back. So the choice is mine. It always was. No board vote decides it. No, you don't decide it. No, Mom's letter doesn't decide it. No, the letter may explain intent. Your authority comes from the trust. I looked toward the locked document cabinet. When exactly can you open it? At the first formal proceeding concerning disposition or use, when the board calls the application? Yes. What if Kristen withdraws in the hallway? Then there may be no proceeding. The letter remains sealed until its condition is met. Are you bringing it? Yes. Where is it now? In the document vault. Has anyone else requested it? Kristen called my office. What did you tell her? That I could not discuss Diane's sealed instruction before the triggering event. Did you tell her it exists? She already knew something existed because Alan mentioned my involvement in his board letter. I frowned. I didn't see that. It was in a later attachment. He handed me a copy. Dad had written that Mom's attorney might appear with documents and that he welcomed a full review of her wishes. He was assuming the sealed instruction would help him. Kristen was likely assuming the same thing. Do they know you haven't read it? I asked. I told Kristen. Did she believe you? You'll have to ask her. I'm not asking her anything else. Derek gathered the timeline. You have another decision before the hearing. What? You could issue the termination notice now. That would make the application pointless. It would change Alan's property status and make Kristen's claimed authorization even weaker. It would also look like I removed him to win. Yes. Is there a trust reason to do it before the hearing? Not if the property remains secure. Then I'm waiting. He nodded. I won't use Dad's housing as a courtroom prop. It isn't a courtroom. You know what I mean. I do. There was another shortcut available. I could submit records showing what Mom paid Kristen. They would answer the public claim that she had sacrificed without compensation. I had bank confirmations and approved payment logs. I took them from my folder. Would these help? I asked. Derek reviewed the first page. They would show compensation. Should I file them? Does the amount affect trustee consent? No. Does it affect whether Alan could authorize commercial use? No. Then why would you file them? To correct the story. Which part? That Kristen did everything for free. Did she claim that in the application? Not directly. Then this would be a public response to an emotional argument. I looked at the transfer list. It would hurt Kristen. It would also pull Mom's private care expenses into a city packet where they did not belong. I'm not filing it, I said. Derek returned the pages. That doesn't mean you accept the false version. I know. It meant I would not answer humiliation with a different humiliation. I put the payment records back in my bag. The planning office scheduled a pre-hearing call 2 days later. The planning director joined with the clerk. Kristen and I were both on the line. Dad was beside Kristen. I could hear him moving papers. The director began. This call is administrative. We are not mediating the family dispute. Understood, I said. Kristen said, there wouldn't be a dispute if the city recognized the resident's authorization. The director continued as if she had not spoken. The recorded deed identifies the trust as owner. The trustee has filed written non-consent. Unless that changes, staff cannot verify owner authorization. Dad spoke. I've lived there for 34 years. That is noted in the file, the director said. Then why doesn't my signature count? Occupancy and ownership are separate for application purposes. I pay utilities. I understand. No, you don't. Kristen interrupted. Can the board still hear the application? Yes. Can it consider the circumstances? The board may hear public testimony relevant to the application. Can it approve conditional use? The director paused. Without valid owner authorization, the application cannot proceed to approval in its current form. Kristen's voice sharpened. Then what is the point of a hearing? You requested that it remain scheduled. I requested a fair review, and the board will conduct one. Dad said, Sarah could fix this with one signature. The director did not answer. I did. I am not signing. Kristen let out a breath. Are you refusing every possible revision? Yes. You haven't seen the new plan. My decision is not based on the floor plan. Then it's personal. My written refusal states the trust basis. Dad said my name. Just my name. The way he said it took me back to every dinner where he expected me to settle things quietly. I held the phone and waited. Sarah, he said again. Don't do this there. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm attending the hearing you requested." The director ended the call a few minutes later. The uncertainty was gone. The city would not treat Dad's signature as owner consent. Kristen knew it. Dad knew it. They still intended to fill the room and make the missing signature feel like an act of cruelty. The night before the hearing, I laid my clothes on the chair beside my bed. I chose a dark blue suit and a plain white shirt. My uniform stayed in the closet. This was not Army business. My rank did not make me trustee. It did not make Dad wrong or Kristen less entitled to speak. I packed one folder. Inside it were the certified deed, the trust certificate, my written non-consent, Dad's authorization, the work order, and the photographs. The draft termination notice stayed at home. The next morning, Derek met me outside City Hall. He carried a brown document envelope sealed with red tape. "Is that Mom's letter?" I asked. "Yes. You still haven't opened it?" "No." He tucked it under his arm. The hallway outside the hearing room was already crowded. I recognized several neighbors. Kristen's designer stood near the door with the revised display boards. Dad and Kristen arrived together. Dad saw Derek's envelope first. Then he looked at me. Kristen followed his eyes and tightened her grip on the leather folder. No one spoke. When the doors opened, they took the table on the left. I sat on the right with my thin folder in front of me. Derek chose a chair in the public row behind us. At 6 o'clock, the board chair called Kristen's application. The planning director gave the staff summary first. She described the proposed 6-room guest house, breakfast service, parking plan, and renovation schedule. Then she reached the ownership issue. "The recorded property owner is the Diane Hamilton Residence Trust," she said. "The successor trustee has filed written non-consent. Staff has not received valid owner authorization." Kristen raised her hand slightly. "We have a response to that." "You'll have time for your presentation," the chair said. Kristen lowered her hand. The planning director finished without recommending approval. She said the board needed to determine whether the application could proceed in its current form. Then Kristen walked to the front. Her designer placed the revised boards on stands. The new drawings showed 4 guest rooms instead of 6. A downstairs room was labeled Resident Suite. Kristen began calmly. "This project is about preserving a family home." She described local tourism and the need for small lodging. She talked about restoring the exterior, improving safety, and keeping the property maintained. She did not mention the original woodwork until a board member asked. "Has interior work already begun?" he said. Limited preparation began. Was it permitted? It did not require a permit. Was it authorized by the owner? My father authorized it. The board member looked at the staff report. "Your father is not the recorded owner. He has occupied the home for 34 years. That wasn't my question." Kristen glanced at Dad. "The trust issue is a family disagreement," she said. "It should not prevent the board from considering the public merits." The chair leaned toward his microphone. "Do you currently have written consent from the successor trustee?" "Not yet." "Has she indicated that consent is coming?" Kristen looked at me. "I believe she's refusing for personal reasons." "That is also not my question." "No," Kristen said. "She has not indicated that consent is coming." The chair thanked her. Her designer spoke next. She explained the revised layout and said the guest house could operate without changing the exterior character. When asked about the removed woodwork, she called it selective interior preparation. I wrote that phrase in my notebook. The contractor's photographs showed pry marks and exposed plaster. The new boards showed everything painted white. Several neighbors spoke. 2 worried about parking. One supported the project because it might improve property values. Another said Dad deserved to remain in his home. The woman next door walked to the microphone. "I've lived beside Alan and Diane for many years," she said. "I care about him. I also read the trust certificate after speaking with Sarah. I don't understand why this application was filed without the trustee's approval." She returned to her seat. Kristen watched her the whole way. Then Dad stood. He carried no notes. My wife and I bought that house when our daughters were young, he said. We raised them there. I maintained it. I paid for it. I buried my wife while living in it. His voice shook on the last sentence. The room became very quiet. Kristen was with us, he continued. She took her mother to appointments. She brought meals. She gave her time. Sarah had her own life. He looked at me. I'm proud of Sarah's service. I always have been. But service somewhere else doesn't change who was present at home. I kept my hands flat on the table. He turned back to the board. I signed the authorization because I want Kristen to have a future there. Sarah says I had no right. Maybe the paperwork says that. But there's more to a home than paperwork. The chair asked, Mr. Hamilton, did you understand that the trust owns the property when you signed? I understood that I live there. Did you understand the question? Dad's mouth tightened. Yes. Did you know trustee consent was required? I knew Sarah was trustee. That isn't the same answer. Dad looked at me again. Your sister earned this house. He said it toward me, but into the microphone. People behind us shifted. Kristen stared at the table. Dad continued. You visited. You handled papers. She did the hard part. Now you're using your mother's name to take away what I promised. The chair stopped him. Mr. Hamilton, this board cannot decide which daughter earned family property. Dad stepped away from the microphone. He sat beside Kristen without looking at me. The chair called my name. I carried my folder to the staff table. I placed the certified deed, trust certificate, and written non-consent in front of the planning clerk. These are certified copies, I said. I'm asking that they be entered into the record. The clerk checked each certification. The chair said, Proceed. The trust owns the house. My father has personal residential occupancy. He does not have authority to assign control or approve commercial use. I am the successor trustee. I do not consent to this application. Kristen raised her hand again. The chair shook his head. I continued. I am not asking the board to decide who cared more for my mother. I'm not asking it to decide whether the project is attractive. I'm not asking it to punish my father or my sister. I looked at the board. I'm stating the boundary the application requires. The owner has not authorized this use. The chair looked toward Derek. We understand an attorney may have relevant information. Derek stood and walked to the microphone with the sealed envelope. My name is Derek Keller. I was Diane Hamilton's civilian estate attorney. I also serve as a major in the Montana Army National Guard, but I'm here only in my civilian role. He held up the envelope. Diane left a sealed instruction in my office vault. It was to be opened at the first formal proceeding concerning the disposition or use of the house. This hearing satisfies that condition. Kristen leaned toward Dad. I could not hear what she said. Derek showed the seal to the clerk and chair. Then he broke the red tape. The sound was small. It carried through the room. He removed 2 pages. I have not previously read this, he said. The letter does not amend the trust or create new property rights. It records Diane's intent concerning the document already in effect. He adjusted his glasses and began. My family may be hearing this because the house has become a source of disagreement. If so, I'm sorry the trust did not prevent the disagreement. It was only meant to prevent a promise from becoming a transfer. Dad's shoulders lowered slightly. Derek continued, Kristen, thank you for being local when I needed daily help. You gave time, patience, and care. I asked that you be paid from my accounts for missed work and regular assistance because care has value. Payment does not reduce my gratitude. Kristen became very still. Someone behind her whispered. Derek kept reading. Sarah, thank you for handling bills, insurance, records, claims, and the financial work I could no longer manage. Much of that work was invisible because you completed it before anyone had to ask twice. I looked down at my hands. Mom had noticed. That should not have mattered as much as it did. It did. Alan, the house is protected because grief makes people promise things they do not have authority to give. Your right to live there is personal. It cannot be assigned to either daughter. Dad stared at the floor. I have not given the house to Kristen or Sarah. I have protected residential occupancy during Alan's use, and I have protected the final value equally for both daughters. Derek turned the page. No occupant may promise, assign, or commercially convert the house. I chose Sarah as successor trustee because she will follow a difficult instruction even when the family wants an easier answer. He finished with one final sentence. Please do not turn care into ownership or paperwork into proof that care did not happen. Derek lowered the letter. No one spoke. The chair asked, "Does that letter grant consent for the proposed use?" "No," Derek said. "It confirms intent. Authority remains in the recorded trust. Does it change the trustee? No. Does it transfer ownership? No. Thank you." Derek returned to his seat. Kristen looked at me. "You knew about that." Her microphone was off, but people nearby heard her. "I knew a sealed instruction existed," I said. "I didn't know what it said. You knew it would help you." "No." Dad turned toward Derek. "Diane wrote that?" "Yes," Derek said. "When?" "The instruction is dated the same day she executed the trust." Dad faced forward again. The chair asked me to return to the microphone. "Miss Hamilton, after hearing the letter, do you maintain your non-consent?" "Yes." "Is there any version of this commercial application you would authorize tonight?" "No." "Are you asking us to resolve your family's trust dispute?" "No. There is no ownership question for the board to resolve. The recorded owner has not consented." I sat down. The board discussed the application for less than 10 minutes. One member said the guest house might otherwise deserve review. Another said the neighborhood questions could not be reached without a valid applicant. The chair summarized. "The board's rules require authorization from the property owner. The occupant's support does not replace trustee consent. Because that authorization is absent, this application cannot proceed." He asked for a motion. A member moved to dismiss the application for lack of owner authorization. Another seconded. The vote was unanimous. The chair brought down his gavel once. Application dismissed. That was all. There was no applause. Kristen closed her leather folder. Her hands were shaking. The designer removed the revised boards from their stands. Neighbors began gathering coats and moving toward the door. Dad stayed seated. I put the certified copies back into my folder. The clerk had stamped them as received. Kristen turned to me. "You let me spend $24,000. I told you no before the hearing. You could have signed." "Yes." "I chose not to. After everything I did for Mom. Mom thanked you. She paid you. She protected your equal interest. She did not give you the house. You got what you wanted." "No. You made Dad look like a fool. I didn't write his authorization." Dad stood. "That's enough." He was speaking to both of us. Derek approached with Mom's letter inside a clear document sleeve. "The original returns to my vault," he said. "Each of you may receive a copy." Dad looked at it but did not take the offered copy. "You knew she didn't trust me," he said. Derek answered carefully. "She protected all three of you from a transfer she did not want. She chose Sarah. She chose a trustee." Dad looked at me. For once, I did not try to make the distinction easier for him. He and Kristen left together. I waited until the room had cleared. Then I asked Derek one question. "Does the board's dismissal change the termination analysis?" "No. The relevant conduct happened before tonight. The signed attempt and the work." "Yes." I looked toward the door. "Then I'm issuing the notice." We returned to his office. He printed the final document while I reviewed the dates one last time. Dad would have 60 days of continued residential access. The trust would schedule repairs and prepare an ordinary sale. Kristen could participate as any other potential buyer, but she would receive no private transfer. After expenses, the net proceeds would remain protected equally for both of us. I signed the notice just before 10 that night. Derek notarized my signature in his civilian capacity and made 3 copies. I did not deliver it at City Hall. I did not hand it to Dad in front of the neighbors. The next morning, I went to the house. Dad opened the door but did not invite me inside. I held out the envelope. "What is it?" he asked. "The trust's 60-day termination notice." He looked at me for a long time. Then he took it. Behind him, the exposed window trim was still wrapped on the dining room floor. "When do I have to leave?" he asked. 60 days from today." He lowered his eyes to the envelope. "And then? The house will be repaired and sold." He nodded once. When he closed the door, he did it gently. For the next 9 days, Dad did not answer my calls. I sent him the dates for the repair work and insurance follow-up. He replied to those messages with one word: received. I also sent a list of moving companies and available apartments in Livingston. He did not respond. The planning office marked Kristen's application dismissed. The orange notice remained near the front steps until a city employee removed it. People still slowed down when they passed the house. The woman next door waved at me one morning while I met the restoration carpenter. She did not come over. I was grateful for that. The carpenter began with the damaged window casing. She worked from my photographs, matching each numbered piece to its original location. The split section took most of 1 day to repair. I helped when I could. Mostly, I stayed out of her way and paid invoices. The final restoration cost was higher than the estimate because the cabinet hardware needed cleaning and 2 sections had warped after removal. I paid from my savings with the understanding that proper trustee expenses would be reimbursed from the eventual sale. That did not make the money feel less spent. Kristen refused every invoice I sent her. Her first message said, "I did not authorize restoration." I answered, "You authorized the removal." She did not reply. A week later, she sent a demand through email. She wanted the trust to compensate her for the lost designer deposit, contractor payment, city fees, and booking consultant. She also wanted the opportunity to purchase the house for the value it had before restoration costs. I forwarded the message to Derek. His answer was short. She may participate in an ordinary sale. She has no right to a private transfer, discount, or reimbursement for unauthorized project expenses. I sent Kristen that sentence. She called me. "So Derek is making decisions now?" "No." He explained the trust. "You could sell it to me. I can sell it through an ordinary process. I already invested in it. You invested in your proposed business. Same address. Not the same asset. I could deduct my deposits from the price." "No." "Why not?" "Because your deposits did not benefit the trust. The design increased the house's value. The design wasn't built. The city fees created a record of a dismissed application." She went quiet. Then she said, "You enjoy saying that." "I don't. You keep saying you don't enjoy any of this. That doesn't make it true. What do you want me to say? That you won?" "I enforced the document. That's your version of winning." I looked at the restoration schedule on my desk. You can make an offer when the property is listed. I'm his daughter. So am I. I cared for Mom. Yes. You keep saying that as if it closes the subject. It closes the ownership question. She ended the call. The $24,000 she had committed did not all leave her account. She canceled some later work before final payment came due. The deposits already paid were gone. The designer kept hers. The booking consultant's agreement made the initial payment non-refundable. The contractor charged for labor already performed and the interrupted day. Kristen tried to blame me for each one. I did not reimburse her. On the 19th day of Dad's notice, he called. "I need the name of that apartment place," he said. "Which one?" "The one near the grocery store." I opened the list I had sent him. Yellowstone Terrace. That sounds expensive. It's not a resort. It's a brick building. Do they have elevators? 2 floors. No elevator. Then why did you send it? The first floor unit was available when I checked. There was silence. "Is it still available?" he asked. "I don't know. I can call." "I can call?" "All right." He didn't end the call. After a few seconds, he said, "There's another place near the park, Ridgeview Apartments. Do they allow trucks? They have outdoor parking. How do you know? I called. When? After I sent the list. Another silence. I don't need you arranging my life, he said. I know. I can find an apartment. I know. I just needed the name. It's Yellowstone Terrace. He hung up. 3 days later, he called again. Can you drive me to Ridgeview? I looked at my calendar. When? Tomorrow. What time? 10. I'll be there. He was waiting on the porch when I arrived. He wore a clean blue shirt and held a folder with bank statements and identification. He locked the front door, then tested it twice. During the drive, he watched the street. I've never rented an apartment, he said. I know. Your mother handled our first lease. I didn't know that. It was before we bought the house. I waited for him to continue. He didn't. Ridgeview had a 1-bedroom unit on the ground floor. The carpet was new. The kitchen had a small electric stove and room for a 2-person table. Dad opened every cabinet. Where does the trash go? He asked. The leasing agent explained that dumpsters were behind the second building. Snow removal? Included. Utilities? Electricity is separate. Dad looked at me. I said nothing. He asked the agent about parking, laundry, and the length of the lease. When she asked why he was moving, he held the folder against his chest. The house is held in trust, he said. My daughter is the trustee. It's being sold. He used the correct words. He did not say I was stealing it. The agent nodded and handed him an application. On the way home, Dad said, "The bedroom's small." It is. My dresser won't fit. Probably not. Your mother picked that dresser. I remember. He looked out the window. Kristen says I should fight the notice. That's your decision. She says you won't put me out if I refuse. I will enforce the date. His jaw moved slightly. You could extend it. Only if a practical problem requires a short extension, not to undo the consequence. So you've decided? Yes. He kept looking out the window. I'll apply for the apartment, he said. Do you want help with the form? No. All right. He completed it himself that afternoon. I checked one line because he asked me to confirm the trust was not his personal asset. I told him it was not. He erased the number he had written. That was the only help he accepted. The apartment approved him 4 days later. He called to tell me, not to thank me. I get the key next month, he said. That works with the notice date. I know how calendars work. Do you need help arranging movers? Not from you. Okay, Kristen will do it. I did not argue. By the middle of the notice period, the windows had been restored. The built-in cabinet was back in place. The repaired split could be seen if I pointed to it, but it no longer pulled apart. The carpenter left the original finish wherever she could. New patches were stained to match. Dad came downstairs on her last day. He ran his thumb along the repaired cabinet edge. Your mother would see the line, he said. Yes, she saw everything. The carpenter packed her tools and left. Dad remained beside the cabinet. I didn't know Kristen planned for me to move, he said. She said you might prefer an apartment later. She said the guest house would pay for someone to help me here. That wasn't in the application. Did you know before the hearing? I learned when I met her at the coffee shop. Why didn't you tell me there? I tried. You said to ask her. Yes. He looked at the window. I thought you were turning me against her. I wasn't. She says she was still working out the details. That may be true. You don't believe her. I believe the business required control of the house. Your residential right prevented that. He put both hands in his pockets. Diane knew I'd promise it. She knew any of us could make a bad decision. No, that line was for me. I did not correct him. The trust protected against an occupant's promise. Dad was the occupant. Mom had known who she married. Did she tell you about the letter? He asked. No, nothing. She told me the trust conditions, not the letter. She thanked you. Yes. I didn't know you handled all those things. You didn't ask. He flinched. I had not meant it as an attack, but it was true. He walked upstairs without another word. On the 56th day, Kristen arrived with a rented moving truck. She used Dad's numbered key. I was at the house to document the condition of each room. When she saw me, she dropped the truck keys into her purse. "We don't need supervision," she said. "I'm documenting the move. You think we're stealing cabinet doors now? I'm recording trust property before possession ends." Dad came down carrying a box of kitchen towels. "Leave it, Kristen." She took the box from him. "You shouldn't have to do this with her watching. She has to inspect." Kristen looked at him. He avoided her eyes. They moved furniture for 6 hours. I stayed out of their path and photographed each empty room. Kristen did not speak to me again until the truck was full. Then she held out the numbered house key. "Dad said you need this." I took it. "What about his other key?" "He has it." She looked past me at the front window. "I lost the deposits." "I know. You could have stopped me sooner. I told you at dinner that Dad couldn't give you the house." "You didn't say you'd terminate him. You continued after written non-consent." Her face tightened. "I hope the sale pays enough to make this worth it. The net proceeds are protected equally. That isn't what I meant." "I know." She got into the truck. Dad followed in his pickup. Neither vehicle waited for me. I stood alone on the porch until they turned the corner. Then I went inside and checked the empty rooms. Dad had left the spare numbered key on the kitchen counter beside Mom's blue coffee cup. I picked up the cup and checked the cabinet above it. Empty. Dad had taken the mismatched plates, the old glasses, and the coffee maker. He had left the cup Mom used for buttons. I wrapped it in a dish towel and placed it in my car. The next morning, I met the insurance inspector for the final repair review. She checked the restored windows and cabinet, then compared them with her earlier photographs. "The repair is complete," she said. "Anything else required? Keep the heat on. Maintain the policy until closing." I signed her form. After she left, I walked through the house with a real estate agent. I chose her because she handled ordinary residential sales in Livingston. She had no connection to Kristen's designer or the proposed business. She measured rooms and photographed the porch. "What are you expecting from the sale?" she asked. "A fair public process. I mean price." "I know." She studied the original cabinet. "This helps. It almost ended up in a disposal truck. I'm glad it didn't." She recommended a listing price based on nearby homes. It was solid, but it wasn't a fortune. After repairs, selling costs, and trust expenses, the remaining money would be useful to both of us. It would not change either life completely. That felt appropriate. Derek prepared written closing instructions. All proper expenses would be paid first. The net amount would then be protected in equal shares for Kristen and me. I sent Kristen the listing agreement before signing. She called that evening. "Is that the actual price?" she asked. "It's the agent's recommendation." I thought it would be higher. So did I. Did the damaged wood reduce it? No. The wood is restored. Then where did all the value go? There was never as much value as the guest house plan assumed. She became quiet. Her business projections had treated the house as a finished commercial property. The market treated it as an older residence with a repaired interior and one kitchen. "Can I still make an offer?" she asked. "Yes, through the agent under the same process as anyone else." "Would my share count toward the price?" "Not before a sale. Your share comes from the net proceeds after closing, so I'd need financing for the full offer." "Yes." "That makes it impossible. It makes it an ordinary purchase." She ended the call without saying goodbye. 2 days later, Dad called. "I left my fishing maps," he said. "They're in the dining room drawer. I need to get them." "When?" "Saturday. I'll meet you there. I know where the house is. The trust has possession now. I'll meet you." He did not argue. Saturday morning, he waited on the porch until I arrived. He had no key. That was the first test. I unlocked the door and followed him to the dining room. He opened the drawer and removed the rolled maps. Then he noticed the new furnace filter beside the stairs. "You bought the wrong size," he said. "I used the number from the old one." "The old one was wrong too." He took off his coat. "Do you have a screwdriver?" "In the kitchen drawer." He changed the filter himself. When he finished, he wrote the correct size on the empty cardboard frame and handed it to me. "Keep that," he said. "I will." He carried the old filter to the trash. At the front door, he stopped. "The apartment is quiet. Do you like it?" "I didn't say that. Do you hate it?" "No." I waited. "The grocery store is close," he said. "That helps." They plowed the parking lot before 7. "Good." He adjusted the maps under his arm. "I told Kristen she cannot ask you for the house again." "What did she say?" "She said I was taking your side." "What did you say?" "I said it isn't mine to promise." That was the second test. He had finally used the fact without someone forcing him. "Thank you," I said. He nodded and stepped outside. We did not hug. The following week, Kristen brought 3 boxes to my house in Bozeman. She set them just inside the front door. "These were from Mom's desk," she said. I looked at the labels: household receipts, medical statements, trust correspondence. "I've been asking where these were." "I know." "Why did you take them?" "I thought I was organizing everything." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have said they belonged with the trust records." "They do. I know that now." I opened the trust correspondence box. The folders appeared complete. There were insurance notices, repair receipts, and copies of documents Derek already held. Nothing created a new right. Nothing changed ownership. Kristen remained by the door. "I didn't remove anything," she said. "I'll inventory the boxes. You still don't trust me. Returning them helps." "That isn't an answer. It's the answer I have." She looked into my living room. "Can I come in?" "Not today." Her face tightened, but she nodded. "All right." She left without another argument. I spent most of Sunday sorting the papers. Mom had kept receipts for everything: furnace service, roof patches, replacement drawer pulls, even the brass lock repair from 12 years earlier. At the bottom of one folder, I found a handwritten list of household instructions. The final line said, "Front lock sticks, lift handle." I placed the note with the trust records. The house was fully restored before it was listed. The agent scheduled photographs for a Tuesday morning. Sunlight came through the front windows and landed across the cabinet doors. The repaired section did not disappear, but it looked cared for. The listing went live that afternoon. Kristen received the same public link as everyone else. She did not submit an offer. Instead, she asked to meet at the house. I said no. "The house is listed now," she said. "I thought that was your condition." "My condition for what?" "For talking." "I didn't say listing fixed our relationship. Then what do I have to do? That isn't a checklist I can give you." She was quiet. I returned the records. Yes. I gave back the key. Yes. I lost my deposits. That was a consequence, not repair. She ended the call. 3 days later, she asked to meet at a coffee shop instead. I agreed. She arrived without her leather folder. She ordered her own coffee and sat across from me. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I told myself being paid didn't count because the money wasn't enough. I never said the care was worth only what Mom paid. I know." She rubbed one thumb along the paper cup. "I also told myself you didn't count because you weren't there every day." I waited. "You handled things I didn't want to handle," she said. "I let Dad act like those things happened by themselves." "Yes. I was angry that you could leave after appointments. I usually went back to work." "I know. I still hated watching you drive away. That doesn't make the application accurate." "No." She looked at me directly. "Taking care of Mom did not entitle me to erase you. It did not give me the right to override what she put in the trust. That was the admission I had needed months earlier. It did not return the money. It did not undo the hearing or repair the cabinet. It did not make me ready to hand her a key." "Thank you for saying it," I said. "Do you forgive me? I'm willing to see whether your actions stay different." That sounds very military. It's also honest. She gave a small, tired smile. We finished our coffee. A week later, she sent half the cost of the temporary protection work, not the full restoration, not the city fees. She wrote that it was what she could pay without missing her own bills. I accepted it. Dad began calling on Sundays. Some weeks we spoke for 5 minutes. Some weeks he complained about the apartment laundry room. Once he asked about my unit and listened to the answer without using it to explain why I had failed the family. Kristen and I met for coffee twice more. She did not ask about the listing price. She did not ask for special access. When the agent scheduled the first showing, Kristen offered to clean the porch windows. I let her. She arrived with paper towels and glass cleaner. Dad came too, carrying the correct furnace filter. Nobody called it reconciliation. We cleaned the house. If this story moved you, subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. By late afternoon, the rooms were ready. Dad carried the trash bags to my car. Kristen folded the cleaning cloths and placed them under the kitchen sink. The agent attached the sale notice beside the front door. Dad touched the porch railing. "I'll call Sunday," he said. "I'll answer." Kristen stood beside him. "Coffee next week? Text me." They walked to their vehicles. I stayed behind to check the windows and turn off the lights. The built-in cabinet stood against the wall with every door back in place. The correct furnace filter hummed below the stairs. I stepped onto the porch and lifted the handle the way Mom had written. Then I locked the restored front door beneath the newly placed sale notice while Diane's original brass key rested in my open palm.